Chapter 382. The baleful star soul-devouring technique was a soul attack technique. Now that his divine sense had reached the limit of the enlightenment realm and was extremely condensed, it would naturally be easier and smoother to cultivate. It would also allow him to learn this technique much faster than before. Now I have 7.82 million soul energy left. Continue to upgrade. Ziyue glanced at the attribute panel and thought again. Spend 6 million soul energy to ignite 100 acupoints. Ignite. Taking a deep breath, Ziyue chose to ignite without hesitation. Buzz. Ziyue's body shook and the 100 acupoints in his body shook at the same time. Then, they were quickly moistened, flushed, broken, and ignited 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. After 100 breaths, Ziyue slowly opened his eyes. The number of acupoints ignited has reached 800. Now I have finally achieved a small goal and reached the level where I can cause auspicious signs to descend from the heavens when I break through. Ziyue took a deep breath and a trace of joy flashed in his eyes. Before this, he had always regarded that expert as his goal. Even when the expert was breaking through, other experts in the God realm were afraid because of the heaven and earth anomaly. But no one dared to ignore his achievement. He could be said to be the top person in the ancient desolate region. Now that he had ignited 800 acupoints and reached this level, he was naturally happy. Maybe now that I have broken through, I can also cause a heaven and earth anomaly? However, 800 acupoints are far from my goal. The universal acupoint map in the Chaoyang sect contains 1,080 acupoints. However, the number of acupoints that were truly perfected was 1296. There's still a huge gap between these two levels. Ziyue quickly calmed down and did not become complacent because of this. Perhaps in the ancient desolate region, igniting 800 acupoints and breaking through to the God realm was indeed the top. But in the wider outer region, he believed that there would be stronger existences. If possible, he naturally did not want to leave any regret. He wanted to improve his foundation, strength, and potential to the extreme. Igniting 800 acupoints has allowed my strength to rise once more. With my current strength, if I were to encounter Taoist Meng and Taoist Yuan again, even if I still couldn't defeat them, I wouldn't be in such a sorry state like before. If we add the God striking ruler, Ziyue silently sensed the surge of power after igniting his acupoints. He secretly compared the changes before and after, and his eyes suddenly flashed with a glimmer of light. As he thought of this, a black ruler appeared in his hand. God-beating ruler. After refining it for a long time, he had finally refined the God-striking ruler. Although it wasn't like the evading divine sword, which he could wield like an extension of his arm, he could still control it and use it. As for power, in the end, he could only find out after trying. He was looking forward to it. It'll take another 2 days for the foreign battleships to arrive. In other words, the competition for the 12 spots would only officially begin 2 days later. In this way, I have time to travel in this ancient city that has been around for thousands of years. Ziyue, dressed in a black robe, walked on the street and looked at everything around him with interest. Usually, he cultivated in seclusion and worked hard to improve his strength. He rarely looked at the scenery along the way. Especially this ancient city, it was simple and natural, with traces of the passage of time. The architectural style was also very different from today's cities, but it was an eye-opener for him. As for Zhu Shuaizhen and the others, in order to better protect Zhao Yu so that she could smoothly get a spot, at least before the foreign battleships arrived, it was impossible for them to go out. Let's go, in the arena square. Zhuge Yu of the Gu God sect and Fan Qingyu of the Zhihua Immortal sect are about to fight. What's going on? Didn't they say that there are still 2 days before the competition for the 12 spots? During this period, these geniuses have been conserving their strength. If they fight in advance and get injured, no matter who it is, they will inevitably miss the opportunity to get the 12 spots. Didn't their elders stop them? The Gu God sect and the Johua Immortal Palace are two of the 7 great celestial method sections. They are like fire and water, like mortal enemies. This time, when the two of them met, I don't know what they said, but they decided to fight to the death. Their elders didn't have time to stop them. Now that the news has spread, a battle is inevitable. It's too late to stop it. I heard that Zhuge Yu deliberately said something about senior sister Fan Qingyu, which angered her. Fan Qingyu's senior sister? Lu Biao? Now that you mention it, I remember that 3 years ago, Lu Biao was found to have lost her cultivation base and was imprisoned in the wafting fragrance pavilion in the capital of Wu Nation. It's said that it was Zhuge Yu who did it. Think about it, the fairy of the Johua Immortal Palace, a noble person, was imprisoned in a place like the wafting fragrance pavilion and was ridden by tens of thousands of people. It's indeed a great humiliation. It's also the most humiliating thing for the Johua Immortal Palace in recent years. Moreover, I heard that when Fan Qingyu was young, she was introduced to the Johua Immortal Palace by Lu Biao. They're very close. I don't know why, but I feel like there's a conspiracy going on. You're not mistaken. The group of people spoke quickly, but they did not hesitate and quickly headed to the square outside the arena. Ziyue narrowed his eyes and frowned before he quickly followed them. The news about the battle between Fan Qingyu and Zhuge Yu spread in a short time. Therefore, when Bai Ziyue stepped into the arena square, countless people had already gathered. It was bustling and seemed to be a little crowded. Is that Fan Qingyu? She's so beautiful. Moreover, she's extremely talented. I heard that she's only 20 years old, but she's already in the celestial method realm at the intermediate stage of the aperture enlightening realm. No wonder she's called Fairy Qingyu. Hehe. Do you know that she hasn't been cultivating for long? I don't know the details, but it's definitely less than 10 years. Hiss. Doesn't that mean? I suddenly understand why the Gu God sect's Zhuge Yu provoked her to fight. Be careful with your words. We'll just watch the show. That's true. However, although Fan Qingyu is extremely talented, she might not be a match for Zhuge Yu in the arena. Not only has Zhuge Yu reached the peak of the intermediate stage of the aperture enlightening realm, but he has also cultivated a group of spirit-devouring vermin that can devour spiritual qi. Moreover, he has an upper-grade spiritual weapon, the One-Heart Spear, which he has refined with his blood. In the future, it will grow together with him. In his hands, even if it's not as powerful as a supreme-grade spiritual weapon, it's not much worse. That's not necessarily true. Since Fan Qingyu dares to accept the challenge, she must have some confidence. As the discussion went on, Ziyue also looked at the two people in the arena. Fan Qingyu was the same as when he first met her. She was wearing a purple robe and looked like a fairy. Her beautiful face and watery eyes made her look like a peerless fairy. Seeing an old friend, Ziyue could not help but feel a little emotional. He was a little happy, a little scared, and a little worried. It was very complicated. Now that I think about it, I shouldn't have let Lu Biao out so early. She's really too young. Zhuge Yu looked at Fan Qingyu and smiled evilly. His tone was full of frivolity. You're courting death. Fan Qingyu's face flashed green. Her cold eyes were full of anger. A flying sword turned into a golden light and rushed out quickly. Don't be hasty. I still want to tell you how I did it, Zhuge Yu shouted, but his movements were not slow. A long spear swayed slightly and rushed out as well. At the same time, vermin the size of a baby's fist flew in the sky and swept toward Fan Qingyu like a nebula. Spirit-devouring vermin. Clang. The flying sword and the long spear collided and made a loud sound. Then they flew back at the same time. Humph. During the battle, Fan Qingyu was very calm. She waved her hand and a ball of light green flame spread rapidly and engulfed all the vermin in the sky. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The spirit-devouring vermin trembled. They opened their mouths and devoured the spiritual qi in the flame crazily. Leaving behind hundreds of vermin's corpses, they rushed out of the flame quickly. Countless vermin flew in the sky again, looking ferocious and terrifying. Hee hee, my vermin are not afraid of fire. Zhuge sneered. He pointed his hand and the one-heart spear rushed out again. At the same time, he secretly touched his waist. A palm-sized vermin that was almost transparent flew out quickly. In a flash, it had already rushed out. Oh no, this is the rank 9 heart-piercing vermin. How did Zhuge cultivate such a spiritual vermin? This vermin might not belong to him. This vermin is so huge and almost transparent. It has reached the level of a rank 6 vermin king. How can it be formed without hundreds of years of cultivation? I remember that the rank 9 heart-piercing vermin is the life vermin of the great elder of the Gu God sect, Miao Changchun, who traveled with Zhuge. It seems that the Gu God sect is really scheming this time. That Fan Qingyu is really stupid. She jumped into such an obvious scheme anyway. With her talent, she could get one of the 12 spots even if she did not participate in the competition. But now she is going to die here. This is a good thing for us and for the other forces as well. If she takes one spot, we will have one less spot. Jiuhua Immortal Palace is already strong enough. The others will not sit back and watch them get another deity elixir. So, although many people have seen through the Gu God sect scheme, they have a tacit understanding to add fuel to the fire. Look, Fan Qingyu is going to die this time. Even if she avoids the rank 9 heart-piercing vermin and defeats Zhuge, she will have other tricks up her sleeve. We just need to watch the show. Chapter 383. Fellow Taoist Zhao Jinming. Speaking of which, we haven't seen each other for nearly 100 years. The last time we met, you and I were still in the Aperture Enlightening Realm, preparing to break through to the God Realm. In an antique courtyard, a Taoist nun with delicate features smiled at the middle-aged cultivator opposite her. Her eyes revealed a hint of age. Yes, at that time we were determined to break through to the God Realm with our own abilities. I remember that Venerable Fengxia ignited 562 acupoints, and I only ignited 537. In the end, you and I could only accept the reality and break through to the God Realm with the help of the God Elixir. Venerable Jinming said helplessly. It's also thanks to the Jiuhua Immortal Palace and your Zhao clan that we won a God Elixir in the competition for the 12 places. Otherwise we would have withered and turned into dust. Venerable Fengxia smiled gently, and then asked curiously, by the way, I wonder why fellow Taoist Jinming invited me here? Zhao Jinming just smiled and said, Tea. My spiritual tea is a third-grade spiritual tea unique to the imperial courtyard of our martial kingdom. It has the most lasting flavor, and I'm not willing to take it out for ordinary people. I've drunk a lot of tea, but you don't want to talk about it. Venerable Fengxia couldn't help but show a trace of suspicion on her face. Suddenly, she seemed to think of something and released her divine sense. Her face suddenly changed and she shouted, Zhao Jinming, I treat you as a fellow Taoist, but you schemed against me. Then, she stretched out her hand and pointed sharply in the distance. Puff! A thin layer of silencing spiritual isolation, a ray light wave, was quickly broken. Then, her figure flashed and immediately disappeared. People in Jiang who have no choice. Zhao Jinming's expression was indescribable. He picked up the spiritual tea, took a sip, and sighed, It's cold. In the arena. Fan Qingyu's eyes were cold, and she didn't say anything. A bronze bell rose to the sky, and in the wind, it grew to a height of several feet. She stretched out her hand, and a spiritual light rushed out. Buzz! It was like a great bell and a drum, shaking the void. Sizzle! Under the vibration of the bronze bell, countless spirit-devouring vermin immediately became askew, and were soon knocked out and scattered on the ground. Even the 9th-level heart-piercing venom seemed to be greatly affected by the sound waves, and its speed couldn't help but be greatly reduced. Then, the bronze bell covered its head. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The 9th level heart-piercing poisonous venom, immediately. Every time the bell, a violent vibration like a great drum, the sound could be heard for 100 miles. After only a few times, that ruthless and violent rank 9 piercing heart goo became increasingly powerless and was temporarily trapped inside. Damn it! Zhuge Yu was enraged. His one heart spear spun and charged madly at Fan Qingyu. Fan Qingyu's expression didn't change. A glazed golden lamp soared into the sky and quickly floated above her head. The golden lamp shone through the glazed lampshade, turning into a mass of rainbow light. Under the illumination, it spread out and enveloped her entire body. Bam! The heart-piercing spear hit the rainbows. The rainbow's light shook slightly, but it recovered in an instant. Kill! Fan Qingyu's eyes were filled with killing intent. Her body was like a phantom as she approached Zhuge Yu. Her pair of slender hands were as white as jade. With a slight shake, they instantly formed a special finger seal. The finger seal was like a fairy guiding the way. Immediately, a ray of light shot out. Oh no! Zhuge Yu's face changed. As he retreated, he cast a defensive technique. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The ray of light broke through the layers of defense. Even though Zhuge Yu tried his best to dodge, it still hit one of his arms hard. Puff! One of his arms quickly turned into a bloody mist and flew out. Zhuge Yu screamed in pain and he was terrified. 9 Splendor Celestial Finger. This is the 9 Splendor Celestial Finger, the 9 Splendor Celestial Finger. How is it possible? With her cultivation, how can she use this skill? There's only one possibility. She has an innate Taoist body. Only someone with an innate Taoist body and strong origin energy can sustain the consumption of this skill with the strength of a middle-stage aperture enlightening realm cultivator. It seems like the Weibo celestial sex speculation is right. She is indeed a peerless genius. She can even take one of the spots. Die! Fan Qingyu frowned, and then she forcefully took a deep breath once more. Her pure white finger shook slightly, and origin energy surged violently as another finger seal condensed into form. Stop! Stop! Dignified and deep voices exploded one after another. Following that, one figure after another shot out from the crowd like lightning. Get lost. Do you really think there's no one in the 9 Splendor Celestial Palace? At the same time, the people from the 9 Splendor Celestial Palace seemed to be prepared. They quickly rushed out and blocked the figures. However, there were also a few people who broke through the obstacles and rushed into the arena. These people looked ferocious, and their killing intent was fierce. They attacked without hesitation. Fan Qingyu did not care about the changes in the outside world. Her aura was dim due to the consumption of her origin energy. However, her eyes were firm and determined. She pointed out a finger seal. Chi! A beam of mystic light shot out like a laser. Celestial Finger. 9 Splendor Celestial Finger. No, Zhuge Yu screamed in horror, but he could not stop the celestial finger from piercing through his body. Puff! His head was pierced through. He was dead. Everyone was shocked. They did not expect to see such a fierce battle before the competition for the 12 spots began. Moreover, a genius who could compete for one of the 12 spots had been killed. Senior sister, I have finally avenged you. Fan Qingyu murmured, and she could not help but feel a little dazed. However, by this time, the attacks of the others had already reached Fan Qingyu. Bang! 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 Several attacks landed on the golden light of the glazed golden lamp, causing it to vibrate violently. As the golden light dimmed, Fan Qingyu was startled awake. Just as he was about to react, he suddenly saw a figure closing in on him like a phantom. A ray of sword radiance that was filled with the aura of gung metal shot out rapidly. Gung metal single chi sword. Sizzle! The void vibrated as the sword radiance shot out. true disciple of the Gu God sect's sect master, Hua Fifan. Fan Qingyu's figure retreated rapidly, a trace of panic finally appearing in her incomparably cold eyes. It was not only because her opponent was in the advanced stage of the aperture enlightening realm, but also because the sword was a superpower. Sword Qi superpower. As for her, she had used up all her origin energy after using 2 superpowers, so it was impossible for her to block such an attack. Further away, the first elder, second elder, fifth elder, and seventh elder of the 9 Flowers Celestial Palace were all blocked by the Gu God sect's disciples. The only God realm expert from the Nanman Kingdom who was watching the battle was indifferent, and he had no intention of helping. It's good to die here. No matter what, I have finally avenged senior sister. Fan Qingyu's thoughts were in a mess at this moment. Suddenly, a face flashed in front of her eyes. She could not help but laugh at herself. How could he appear here? After all, they were from 2 different worlds. Suddenly, a ray of spiritual light shot out like lightning and landed on the gung metal single Qi sword. Sizzle! The gung metal sword Qi paused for a moment, and then with a slight tremble, it broke through the obstruction and shot out again. However, it was also at this moment that a huge and solid palm print had already landed with a loud bang, ruthlessly slamming onto the sword light. Bang! Under the powerful and turbulent palm print, the bright light of the gung metal sword Qi dimmed quickly. Then, like ice melting, it shattered. They were defeated and scattered. Was the superpower broken? What's going on? Hua Fik also used his superpower, but it was broken. Who is he? This palm seems to be the great immortal martial handprint of the Wu Kingdom's imperial family. Could it be someone from the Zhao family? Countless people stared in shock at the unfamiliar figure that had suddenly appeared in the arena. Their faces were filled with shock. Even though Hua Fifan was unable to exert the true power of this superpower due to his lack of control, it was still not something that an ordinary cultivator could withstand. In comparison, the power of Ziyue's palm print was more like a superpower. It was ferocious and powerful. Many people recognized that it was the great immortal martial handprint of the Zhao family of the Wu Kingdom. They were surprised. Is the Zhao family going to break the agreement? Miao Changchun, the great elder of the Gu God sect, shouted. Everyone was shocked. Could it be that the Zhao family of the Wu Kingdom had intervened this time? At this critical moment, Ziyue stepped in. Naturally, he would not watch as Fan Qingyu died in front of his eyes. Fan Qingyu looked at the familiar figure in front of her and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Long time no see. Ziyue turned to look at her and said with a smile. Why are you? Watch out. Fan Qingyu's face suddenly changed as she hastily reminded him. Die. Hua Fifan's confident attack was broken. His face suddenly revealed a trace of ferociousness. At the same time, a black sword also shot out like a bolt of lightning. Following that, the other cultivators of the Gu God sect executed the grand art of ignition at the same time and unleashed their strength to the maximum. More ferocious attacks were launched at Hua Fik at the same time. Not far away, within the Copper Bell, the rank 9 heart-piercing Gu seemed to have not given up on struggling. At this moment, it finally managed to lift the Copper Bell and break free. Then, it turned into a ray of light and rapidly charged over. You're courting death. Bai Ziyue's expression remained unchanged. He raised his palm gently, and a giant palm print rapidly appeared in the air. This palm print was solid, vast, and powerful. It moved slightly and then quickly descended. It was as if a giant mountain was toppling over, suppressing everything. Rumble. Chapter 384. Rumble. As the grand immortal martial palm descended, a powerful pressure caused the air to explode. At the same time, it swiftly shattered all of the incoming attacks and sent them flying. The palm print did not lose its strength and continued to move forward. No, run! The cultivators of the Goo God sect, who had just arrived, were horrified. They turned around without hesitation, only to find that the space around them had been sealed, and they could not move at all. When they raised their heads, their vision turned dark. This attack, Hua Fifen's eyes widened and his face turned pale. Because Bai Ziyue had used his gung metal single sword qi to attack Yi Futian, it did not really land on his body. Therefore Yi Futian could not sense it clearly. However, now that he was facing the attack, he realized how terrifying it was. He could not block it. He knew that he could not block it with his own means. Even if he could run away, as the palm print fell, the void froze. It was as if the entire world was going against him, and this made him understand even more clearly. Even if he wanted to run away, he could not. You forced me to do this. Hua Fifen's heart skipped a beat and his eyes were filled with pain. He flipped his hand and an ancient sword-shaped talisman appeared. He activated it without hesitation. Buzz! The talisman vibrated and turned into a golden gung sword radiance that was more dazzling and powerful than before. As soon as the sword light appeared, it was sharp and piercingly cold, emitting endless sharpness. Almost immediately, it tore apart the frozen and sealed void. Then, the sword light flashed and Sumeru slashed out. Puff! This sword strike was extremely powerful. It was 10 times more powerful than Hua Fifen's previous sword strike. It fiercely clashed with the palm print, and the golden sword light dimmed a little. Then, it pierced through the palm print and smashed it into pieces. He blocked it. The rest of the cultivators were overjoyed. They felt that they had survived a disaster. You made me waste a divine power talisman. Go to hell. Hua Fifen's face was hideous and his eyes were filled with hatred. He controlled the golden gung single qi sword and slashed again. It was like a white waterfall that slashed toward Ziyue. This is a divine power talisman? As expected of the Goo God sect, one of the 7 great immortal cultivation sects. They have such a deep foundation that they can make divine ability talismans. It should be known that the materials required to make the divine power talisman included the skin of a divine realm great demon, the blazing blood divine marrow liquid, and the extremely cold water. Just the materials alone cost more than 1 million spirit stones. Moreover, they were extremely precious and priceless. Finally, and also the most crucial point, it required a divine realm expert to use a special method to seal it. Only then could it be formed. If he failed, he would lose over 1 million spirit stones. This magical power talisman seals the most powerful magical power of the Goo God sect, Gung Jin 1 Qi sword. According to my calculation, it should be made by Hua Fifen's master, Miao Dingjin, the leader of the Goo God sect. Even if the talisman's power is only equivalent to 80% of Miao Dingjin's power, it is still not something an ordinary cultivator can resist. Even for deity realm experts, there were not many who dared to take it head-on. However, it is beyond my expectation that Miao Dingjin would give this magical power talisman to Hua Fifen. As everyone knows, the next leader of the Goo God sect is Miao Yongquan, the son of Miao Dingjin. Perhaps it is related to the one 30 years ago. That would make sense. So, that young man is doomed. He is doomed. Ziyue frowned. When he was about to dodge, he remembered that Fan Qingyu was behind him. He stopped and used all his defensive techniques at once. At the same time, he stretched out his hand. A speck of light shot out and quickly landed on the sword qi. Treasure stabilizing divine light. In a split second, the Gung Jin sword qi rushed out again. At the same time, Ziyue's flying sword shot out. However, the Gung Jin sword qi was too fast. The two did not even meet. He had no choice but to use a gourd hanging on his waist. Clang! 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 Streaks of sword qi shot up to the sky. Sword-storing gourd. The sword light of the broken jade sword finger, which had accumulated over 20 rays of sword light, was activated at the same time, fiercely chopping towards the Gung Jin sword chi. In the midst of the puff, puff, puff sounds, the Gung Jin sword chi did not lose its strength and fiercely chopped down. Boom! The 5 elements shield technique slightly condensed and then collapsed. The golden thread spiritual highlands defensive spiritual highland slightly shrank, and with a pop, it turned into spiritual light and dissipated. The Gung Jin sword chi slashed the celestial martial glazed light with irresistible force. The celestial martial glazed light dimmed slightly and then shone brightly again. The Gung Jin sword chi was broken. How could it be? Hua Fifen's face changed greatly. At this moment, he really understood how terrifying Ziyue was. He immediately turned around and fled without hesitation. You attacked me again and again. Do you really think I have a good temper? Ziyue said coldly. The evading divine sword flashed slightly. Under the one sword break all techniques, the sword radiance was like a flash of white light. No, you can't kill me, Hua Fifen was horrified. A blood red wood rushed out. Puff! The flying sword instantly pierced through the wood and then pointed at Hua Fifen's body. It split the protective spiritual light on his body and pointed at his head with irresistible force. How dare you? Stop! The experts of the Gu God sect shouted, but it was too late for them to stop Hua Fifen. Bang! Hua Fifen's body fell to the ground heavily and blood stained the ground. I can't kill you? In my eyes, there is no one in the world that I can't kill. Ziyue's indifferent voice came out leisurely. The scene was silent. Even the experts of the Gu God sect and the Jiuhua Fairy Palace stopped fighting. Everyone opened their eyes wide and looked at Ziyue in disbelief. Hua Fifen was dead? He had used his divine sense and divine power talisman to launch an attack of the divine realm. How could he still be dead? How could it be possible without the help of a divine realm expert? Who on earth is he? Stop! Who dares to be presumptuous? At this moment, a figure came from afar like a flowing light. A powerful aura of the divine realm expert was released and quickly crushed the crowd. It was the divine realm expert of the Jiuhua Fairy Palace, Perfected Fengxia. Perfected Fengxia glanced around and felt relieved when she saw Fan Qingyu was intact. Then, she saw the situation at the scene. The surroundings were silent. She was slightly stunned and a trace of doubt appeared on her face. Perfected Fengxia. Perfected Fengxia is here. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Then, they revealed looks of interest. The arrival of Perfected Danxia meant that the Gu God sect's plan had failed completely. They had failed miserably and lost 2 talented disciples. Zhuge Yu's failure was not a big deal because the chances of getting one of the 12 spots were slim. However, Hua Fifen, who had reached the late stage of the Enlightenment realm and mastered the Divine Sense Golden Single Chi Sword, was also one of the candidates. However, both of them died here. It had to be said that this was good news for many people. However, even more people's gazes landed on the calm young man in the middle of the field. They were very confused and wondered who he was. Martial Granduncle. Fan Qingyu greeted him respectfully. Martial Uncle. Martial Granduncle. The disciples of the Jiuhua Fairy Palace also gathered around. What happened? Perfected Danxia asked hurriedly. Soon, someone told her what had happened. Perfected Danxia turned around and looked at the disciples of the Gu God sect coldly. She said coldly, "Good, very good. It seems that the Jiuhua Fairy Palace has been silent for a long time and some people think that we are easy to bully. I won't vent my anger on you juniors. I will visit the Gu God sect in a month's time." Instantly, the disciples of the Gu God sect were shocked. They knew that Perfected Danxia would not be the only one who would come. Including her, there were 3 divine realm experts in the Jiuhua Fairy Palace. "Let's go!" The Grand Elder of the Gu God sect, Miao Changchun, shouted with a gloomy face. Soon, the disciples of the Gu God sect began to deal with the bodies of Zhuge Yu and Hua Fifen. Miao Changchun stopped when he saw the hole in Hua Fifen's head. He looked at Zue and said coldly, I will remember you. You are dead. You will die. In the celestial pavilion in the ancient desolation city, Fan Qingyu poured a pot of tea and gently poured it into a teacup. As the steam rose, she lifted the teacup and gently placed it on the opposite side of the table. As she raised her head, her beautiful eyes revealed an undisguised curiosity. I didn't expect your strength to improve so quickly in half a year. She looked at Zue and said with a sigh. Fan Qingyu was talented and her cultivation speed was fast. In half a year, she had reached the peak of the middle stage of the Aperture Enlightening Realm and could reach the late stage of the Aperture Enlightening Realm at any time. However, compared to the Bai Zue of the past, his current strength already required her to look up to him. How could this not shock her? I was just lucky. Zue thought for a while and said, with some luck. Fan Qingyu nodded and fell silent. In his heart there were countless questions that he wanted to ask. However, he didn't know what to say. He could only say two words, thank you. Since we know each other, I won't leave you in the lurch. Zue replied with a smile. Even so, you have to be careful from now on. I actually blame myself for getting you into this. Fan Qingyu said. You don't have to worry. Zue waved his hand and said confidently, if nothing goes wrong, I will fight for the 12 spots with you. I think that with my strength, it shouldn't be a problem for me to get a spot. Before the competition starts, I just have to be careful. The threat of the Gu God sect is nothing to me. However, the apologetic look on Fan Qingyu's face deepened. Chapter 385. I'm worried because I know that you're going to participate in the competition. Fan Qingyu shook her head helplessly and said, I learned from Marshal Granduncle that Hua Fifen's identity is not simple. How is it not simple? Zue raised his eyes and asked. He already knew that Hua Fifen was the true disciple of the Gu God sect. He was not afraid of Hua Fifen's identity. The divine power talisman that Hua Fifen used was left by the Gu God sect's sect master. He had fought with Hua Fifen several times. Even if the divine power talisman could only exert 80% of Hua Fifen's strength, he already had a certain estimate. Not to mention that he did not use all of his means. You may not know the rule of the competition for the 12 places. The strongest person in each competition will have the opportunity to return to our place with the Celestial Spirit Sect's worship after 30 years. In the competition 30 years ago, Hua Fifen's biological father won the first place. He was Hua Wenxing, who was at the peak of the Aperture Opening Realm. Fan Qingyu said with a solemn face. Zue frowned slightly. He did not expect that there was such a relationship. But you don't have to worry too much. Even the Celestial Spirit Sect attaches great importance to the competition for the 12 places. Otherwise, they would not have taken out 12 deity elixirs. Even if Hua Wenxing really wants to target you, he won't dare to be too presumptuous in the competition for the 12 places. Once we arrive at the Celestial Spirit Sect, I think there won't be any problems with the help of the seniors of the Zhuhua Immortal Palace and the Chaoyang sect. No matter what, I will always stand by your side. Fan Qingyu said with a firm face. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. Even if he really wants to target me, I can break a few of his teeth. Zue's eyes flashed and he replied softly. After separating from Fan Qingyu, Zue could not help but show a trace of pondering on his face. He didn't regret lending a hand. Even if it was the so-called sage of literature, he wasn't too worried about it. In essence, he was not interested in competing for one of the 12 places and becoming an official disciple of the Celestial Spirit Sect. What he truly cared about was the opportunity to ascend to the outer realm and step foot into an even vaster world. After all, the Heavenly Spirit Sect's worship was the only way he knew to enter the outer realms. Now that something had happened, he couldn't help but feel a little unhappy. Immortal Master Bai, the First Elder is looking for you. Just as Ziue returned to his residence, an early-stage aperture opening realm cultivator looked at Ziue in awe. Lead the way. Ziue recognized that the other party was a disciple of the Chaoyang sect. He nodded his head and replied. He knew that with him in the limelight, the people of Chaoyang sect would not remain indifferent and unresponsive. Regardless of whether it was to probe or to rope him in, he would have to meet him first. Soon, Ziue appeared in a living room. Other than the first elder, Zhuang Xinping, the second elder, Yu Yunyan, the third elder, Jin Qiu, even elder Zhong Yun and elder Tang Xianren were present. Other than them, he had met the sect master's first true disciple, Xiet Songqiong, and the third disciple, Duan Xingchen, in the sixth ultimate cave abode. In addition, the Grand Elder's grandnephew, Qin Feiyu, was also standing at the side. However, at that moment, practically everyone's gazes were focused on by Ziue. Shock, suspicion, disbelief, and so on. Duan Xingchen, in particular, had an extremely complicated look in his eyes. Because they had previously fought together to kill the red water-green dragon and encountered the sect master of the Tao Accomplishment sect, he had always been suspicious of Ziue's true identity. The strength that Ziue had displayed in the arena this time was too shocking. In addition, the great immortal martial handprint had left a deep impression on him. Therefore, he was now 80% sure of Ziue's true identity. Celestial Master Bai, please. Seeing that Ziue had stepped in, the first elder, Zhuang Xinping, personally went forward and led him in with a fervent look on his face. You're too kind, first elder. Ziue smiled slightly and then looked at the others. Greetings, elders and senior brothers. Greetings, Celestial Master Bai. The others returned the greeting. In the world of immortal techniques, strength was respected. Ziue's strength was enough to attract their attention and respect. Celestial Master Bai, we have some doubts that we would like to ask you about. We hope that you can answer us. Of course, if Celestial Master Bai is unwilling to tell us, we won't force you. After Zhuang Xinping led Ziue to his seat, he spoke after pondering for a while. Please ask, First Elder. Ziue nodded. What realm is your strength at? Zhuang Xinping asked. I'm at the peak of the Aperture Awakening realm. Ziue did not hide anything and said frankly. Then you, Zhuang Xinping took a deep breath. Due to the combat strength that Ziue had displayed earlier, he was a little mentally prepared for this. Even though his face was twitching and his voice was trembling slightly. After a while, he softened his tone and continued to ask, Are you the Kunlun Taoist? The scene was dead silent. Everyone's eyes were also fixed on Ziue at this moment. Yes. Ziue continued to nod. He knew that Chaoyang sect was one of the 7 major immortal technique sects after all. If they really put in the effort to investigate him, they would have already suspected his true identity based on his growth trajectory. Now that his strength had been exposed, he had already expected that the other party would ask him this question. If it was before, he might have hesitated. However, at this time, it was no longer important to him whether his identity was exposed or not. This was because his strength was enough to withstand all kinds of prying eyes. Even though they had already suspected it, they were still extremely shocked when they heard Ziue admit it personally. The strongest person below the God realm and invincible in the Aperture Awakening realm. I didn't expect the Kunlun Taoist to be a member of Chaoyang sect all along. Someone could not help but sigh emotionally. Celestial Master Bai, you've kept me in the dark for a long time. I was still worried when the sect leader of Tao Accomplishment sect chased after you. Now that I think about it, I was worried for nothing. Also, I hope Celestial Master Bai won't blame me for abandoning you and running away. After all, we were facing Zhou Qing, the sect leader of Tao Accomplishment sect, and Diao Linkue, the peak leader of the Witchcraft sect's cursing faction, who were both at the peak of the Aperture Awakening realm. We had no choice but to run away. Duan Xingchen could not help but take a step forward and say apologetically. Couples are like birds in the forest. In the face of a great disaster, they still flee separately. It's normal for people to flee in all directions when they encounter a life and death situation. I don't mind. Ziyue shook his head and said, "Thank you for your understanding, Celestial Master Bai." Duan Xingchen said gratefully. "Celestial Master Bai, are you also going to participate in the competition for the 12 spots?" At this moment, the second elder, Yu Yunyan, could not help but ask. "That's indeed the plan." Ziyue nodded and looked at the crowd. "Actually, this is the real reason why we called you here. Perhaps you don't know Hua Fifin's true identity." Zhuang Xinping was about to elaborate but was interrupted by Ziyue. "I already know that his father, Hua Wenxing, was the strongest among the geniuses 30 years ago. This time, he has the opportunity to come here again with the warship." "That's right. Back then, Hua Wenxing's strength and talent were top-notch. In fact, he's only slightly weaker than Fan Qingyu from the Nine Radiants Celestial Sect and Zhao Yuer from our Chaoyang Sect. During the competition for the spots, he was already at the peak of the Aperture Awakening realm. Now that 30 years have passed and he's cultivating in the Celestial Spirit Sect, no one knows what level his strength has reached. If he's still at the Aperture Awakening realm, we won't be afraid. When the sect master comes back from the secret realm, we can deal with him so that he won't target you too much. However, once he reaches the God realm, it's hard to predict what he will do. It'll be very tricky." Zhuang Xinping said with a solemn face. "You mean he might attack you directly?" Ziyue asked softly. "In the early years, I've dealt with him and know that he's a vengeful person. Once he breaks through to the God realm, he'll definitely attack you. At that time, for the sake of the overall situation and for the sake of Zhao Yuer, Duan Xingchen, Qin Feiyu, and the others, even the sect master won't intervene. Besides, he's an official disciple of the Celestial Spirit Sect after all. Even if you're talented, before you officially get the 12 spots, the supervisor of the Celestial Spirit Sect won't pay too much attention to you. In other words, he'll leave you alone," Yu Yunyan said. "So, we suggest that you give up the competition for the spots this time. I think, with your talent, even if you don't join the Celestial Spirit Sect, the chances of you breaking through to the God realm without the help of the God Elixir are more than 50%. After 30 years, if you still can't break through, we can guarantee that the next time someone among the disciples can compete for the spots, he'll definitely leave a God Elixir for you to break through. What do you think? We're actually doing this for your own good. I think you should have your own judgment of the horror of the God Realm experts. They're definitely not comparable to the enlightened immortal masters. Even if you're said to be invincible in the enlightened immortal masters, it's still the same. It's better to stay here, concentrate on cultivation, and grow smoothly. In the future, you'll also have the possibility of achieving Tao. Moreover, there's actually a huge opportunity in this domain. With your strength and potential, you'll definitely be able to get it when you break through to the God realm. It's not necessarily worse than joining the Celestial Spirit Sect." Great Elder Zhuang Xinping said immediately. "Thank you for your kindness, but what you said before is just a guess. Everything will only be known when the Celestial Spirit Sect arrives 2 days later, right? Then let's wait until then." Bai Ziyue shook his head calmly and continued, "What about the secret realms and opportunities that you mentioned? What are they? Can you explain it to me?" Chapter 386. Perhaps Zhuang Xinping and the others were concerned about his safety. That was why they wanted him to give up on the competition. However, he was not willing to wait. In his opinion, the shackles of the realm were not a problem. What he really cared about was the opportunity to go to the outer region. Looking at the ancient desolate city, you should know that this place used to be glorious. At its peak, there were dozens of primordial spirit realm cultivators and thousands of golden core realm cultivators. Although it has declined and lost all its experts, there were still some ruins left behind. However, the existence of such a powerful being would naturally leave behind some ruins, inheritances, or treasures. Most of the ruins were in the Astral Wind Canyon. Every time the Astral Wind Canyon stopped for a rest, the God Realm experts of various forces would go to the canyon to explore. And that opportunity was precisely within the Astral Wind Canyon. When Master Immortal Bai was in the Aperture Enlightening Realm, he was crowned as the strongest under the God Realm. He was invincible in the Aperture Enlightening Realm. Presumably, when he reached the God Realm, his strength would be far superior to ordinary masters in the same realm. Maybe he can help our sect to take down several important places and obtain the inheritances and treasures of Golden Core perfected cultivators or primordial spirit true masters. Zhuang Xinping explained. For example, the Nine Magnificence glazed lamp of the Nine Magnificence Immortal Palace, the all-creation cauldron of the Xianqing True Sect, and the Chaoyang Divine Bell of the Chaoyang Sect were all obtained from the ruins. The grades of these Dharma treasures are above ordinary Dharma treasures. Most of the divine powers and secret techniques of the various sects were obtained from there. Although there are many dangerous places, after countless years of exploration, as long as you are careful, there will be no problems. Yu Yunyan said patiently. I remember that even when the wind stops in the Astral Wind Canyon, those below the God Realm will definitely die if they step into it. Ziyue said with an inexplicable expression. That's right. When the Astral Wind Canyon stops for a rest, the wind will still blow. It's just that the wind is weaker. There is a kind of wind called the soul-eroding divine wind, which is used to erase the divine consciousness of cultivators below the God Realm. Without the transformation of the divine consciousness, cultivators below the God Realm won't be able to withstand it. Therefore, we only hope that you will go there after you reach the God Realm. We can still afford to wait. Zhuang Xinping said gently. I see. Ziyue nodded and sighed in his heart. Zhuang Xinping and the others could afford to wait, but he couldn't. With the speed at which his strength was increasing, who knew what realm he would reach the next time he stopped in Astral Wind Canyon? Naturally, he wasn't willing to wait for 30 years in vain. However, he didn't say it directly. Instead, he asked, in that case, the gales in this Astral Wind Canyon actually blew up later on? Our place was originally connected to the outside world? Then under the blockade of Astral Gorge, the Grand Myriad Mountains, and the boundless sea, besides these 12 positions, do all of us here have any other methods to head to the outer regions? That Astral Wind Canyon should have been formed 3,000 years ago. It was originally a vast continent, and the so-called canyon was just a result of the astral winds blowing it down. Although there was relatively little contact with the outside world due to the distance, it would not be as difficult as it was now. As for the current method of going to the outer realm, the safest option would be to get one of the 12 places. Borrowing the Celestial Spirit Sect's warship would also be much safer. Secondly, we can use the teleportation array. Zhuang Xinping replied after pondering for a while. There's a teleportation array? Ziyue was a little excited at once. Yes, most of them were left behind when our place was at its peak. However, the last teleportation array that could lead to the outer realm lost its function 1,000 years ago. Therefore, if you want to really set foot in the outer realm, you can only cross the 3 Forbidden Land. Among them, Astral Wind Canyon, even when the gales stop, is still attacked by endless gales. You need to constantly maintain your primordial energy to protect your body. Even a God Realm expert can only hold on for a few days. Unless you rely on a high-level warship like the Celestial Spirit Sect, which can isolate the evil gales like the soul-eroding divine wind, otherwise it's impossible to pass through. On the contrary, although the boundless sea and the Grand Myriad Mountains are also dangerous, it's possible to pass through. Looking at the records of the major immortal sects, It seems that someone did use a super long-distance voice-transmitting talisman to send a message, saying that he had reached the outer realm. However, this is after all a small probability. It's considered good if 1 out of 10 God Realm experts can succeed. Zhuang Xinping shook his head and sighed. It's not that simple. Ziyue nodded thoughtfully. So, in the end, it still comes down to the original point. If I want to set foot in the outer realm, I have to compete for one of the 12 places and rely on the celestial spirit sex worship, or I have to think of another way. Ziyue thought to himself. Passing through the grand myriad mountains and the boundless sea is still too dangerous. Therefore, my first choice is to compete for one of the 12 places and rely on the celestial spirit sex worship to step into the outer realm. With my strength, it's not difficult to compete for one of the 12 places. However, I have to be prepared for the threat of Hua Wenxing. With his talent and the cultivation resources of the celestial spirit sect, it's very likely that he will become a God Realm immortal in 30 years. So, just in case, I have to improve my strength as much as possible. Ziyue silently analyzed and immediately judged his next situation. He thought of improving his strength as much as possible, because only strength can prove everything. Any obstacle, any trouble, in the face of absolute strength, is not worth mentioning. Now, the only things that can improve my strength, besides the ignition of the acupoints, are the 2 divine abilities. I don't have much time left. At most, I only have 2 days. In 2 days, I have to learn the basics of shrinking into an inch as soon as possible, and then cultivate it to perfection as soon as possible. In this way, with the advantage of speed, even if the other experts of the Celestial Spirit sect intervene, I will be invincible. In addition, I have to improve the divine light of obliteration as soon as possible. It's best if I can learn it, but even if I can't, I have to be able to exert a certain amount of power. Bai Ziyue had a strong sense of danger. He didn't hesitate at all. He didn't care that the night had fallen. He immediately rushed out of the room silently, turning into a shadow and disappearing. Out of the ancient desolation city, Ziyue's figure appeared. He immediately began to try to use shrinking into an inch. His spiritual sense and origin energy merged, and as they moved, a mysterious feeling flowed in his heart. He took a step forward. A huge amount of yuan li was consumed. Swoosh. Ziyue's movements seemed very slow. From the moment he lifted his feet to the moment he put them down, his movements were very ordinary. However, the moment he lifted his feet and put them down, his body was like a flash of lightning, rapidly traversing a distance of more than 10 feet. The slow movement and the fast speed formed a sharp contrast. It was abrupt and magical. Continue. Ziyue felt the changes slightly, adjusted his posture and movements, and then moved his body again, taking another step forward. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After one step, another step. Whether it was high mountains, steep ridges, swamps, or rivers, the distance seemed to be shortened when he stepped over them. In just a few steps, he had already crossed them. As he took one step after another, the immortal martial origin energy in his body was rapidly consumed. On his attribute panel, the cultivation progress of the divine ability, earth shrinking, also began to slowly increase. Uninitiated 72%, uninitiated 73%, uninitiated 74%. After an hour, Ziyue appeared in a lush and primitive forest. Towering trees, thick and strong spirit vines, and the faint sounds of countless insects, birds, and beasts could be heard. This place was the 10,000 Demon Forest, which was only separated from the endless 10,000 mountains by a river. That was why it was separated. It belonged to a forbidden area nearby. There were countless small demons and big demons. It was even said that there were demon beasts comparable to the God realm. Human cities and even villages did not dare to live within 300 miles of this place. As for Bai Ziyue, He planned to use the numerous demons here to improve his soul energy and cultivate various divine abilities and spells at the same time. Of course, he was not reckless. The immortal martial completion Tao method flowed, and the immortal martial true body and the immortal martial glazed light quickly rose. The spiritual gang transformed by the golden thread spiritual gang pearl was like willow catkins. As it fluttered, it quickly formed a spiritual gang armor. The positive and negative 5-element shield technique was like an angle, protecting him behind his back. Following that, he slowly took one step after another. He walked through the dense forest as if he was walking on flat ground, going deep into the forest. Occasionally, thoughts flashed through his mind, and the immortal martial origin energy in his body surged rapidly like a turbulent river. In front of Ziyue, in the midst of the chaos of spiritual energy, a strange, destructive aura suddenly appeared quietly. It seemed to be able to destroy everything. Ziyue gently pointed and shot out the spiritual light without hesitation. Swoosh! The speed was extremely fast. The ball of destructive spiritual light quickly shot out and landed on the body of a giant python that was dozens of feet away. Divine sense. Silent divine light. Puff! Without making a sound, the giant python and the tree it was climbing on quickly disappeared without a trace. Soul energy plus 9422. This is the silent divine light? Ziyue's eyes widened, and he could not help but show a bit of surprise on his face. Even though the giant python was only a small demon equivalent to a cultivator at the 9th level of the Qi refining realm, its strength was limited. But Ziyue could clearly feel the horror of this divine light. When he used it, he was not familiar with it, and there were many mistakes, but the power of this divine sense had already surpassed the full-strength attack of many cultivators at the peak of the Enlightenment realm. As expected of a divine sense, its power is really terrifying. In this case, once this divine sense is learned, it will not be much weaker than my immortal martial handprint. Once it is improved to the small success, the great success, or even the perfection, this divine sense will be even more terrifying and surpass all the methods I have mastered before. Ziyue's eyes lit up. Chapter 387. Ziyue felt that his body was running low on Yuanli. He used his soul energy to replenish his Yuanli and took another step forward. Whoosh! He disappeared from the spot. In order to quickly master the shrinking earth into an inch and the annihilation divine light, Ziyue did not care about the consumption of his Yuanli. Every time his Yuanli was exhausted, he would use his soul energy to recover. From the ancient desolate city to this place, he had used his soul energy to recover twice. This was the third time. When he reappeared, Ziyue appeared in a pile of withered trees. A huge herd of wild boar demons appeared in front of him. There were more than 100 wild boar demons, and more than 10 of them were at the spirit detecting realm. The strongest wild boar king was at the late stage of the spirit detecting realm. It was not any weaker than the crimson water-green dragon he had encountered before. The entire herd of wild boars was more threatening than a peak enlightening realm cultivator. Ziyue's expression did not change. His divine sense surged, and his immortal martial Yuanli quickly boiled. Sizzle! A terrifying spiritual light that was filled with destruction and could destroy everything quickly took shape. Then, it turned into a ball of divine light and quickly rushed out. Puff! Without a sound, a mid-stage spirit-detecting realm wild boar demon and 7 or 8 small demons beside him were turned into blood and killed without even making a sound. Roar! Ziyue's actions immediately alarmed the wild boar king. With a shocking roar, more than 100 wild boar demons charged over like an incomparably powerful giant elephant. As the demons gathered, their auras merged together. They were like a wall that kept advancing. They were powerful, invincible, and unstoppable. Any giant trees, spirit vines, and even mountain rocks that stood in their way were destroyed and shattered the moment they collided with them. Following a series of footsteps, more than 100 enormous beasts approached by Ziyue with an unstoppable aura. Die! Ziyue's expression did not change. Another ball of annihilation divine light fell. Puff! The annihilation divine light quickly covered the wild boar's head. However, the wild boar demon king seemed to have mastered a technique that could combine their auras and gather the power of a group of demons. This attack only caused them to sway slightly, their chi and blood to weaken, and their movements to be impeded. However, not a single wild boar died. Ziyue frowned and took a step forward. His body flashed like lightning and appeared 100 feet away. Roar! The wild boar roared and quickly chased after him. Ziyue's aura merged together. While he executed the earth-shrinking sacred art to dodge the attack, he also executed the annihilating divine light once again. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. The wild boar fiend monarch crashed into by Ziyue's defensive Dharma spells. By Ziyue's defensive Dharma spells were still somewhat unfamiliar. Boom! The outermost positive and negative 5 elements shield technique dimmed slightly, and then quickly brightened again. The wild boar demon monarch rammed into him again. As his demonic essence surged, sharp earth spikes shot out of his body and struck the defensive spirit light with ferocious might. Poof! Finally, the outermost positive and negative 5 elements shield technique was shattered. However, at this moment, Ziyue's annihilation divine light condensed and blasted down again. In an instant, the combination of auras of the wild boar demons was shattered. Just as he was about to use the annihilation divine light again to kill them, Ziyue's eyes suddenly flashed with the cultivation progress of this spell, and his eyes lit up. He realized that his progress in using the divine light of annihilation was much faster than usual when there was resistance from his opponent. With just 2 divine rays of annihilation, the progress of his cultivation of this spell increased from 5% to 9% of the uninitiated stage. That's true. With an opponent resisting, there's a very obvious contrast between the annihilation divine light's power and its evolution. Naturally, I'll get some feedback from my experience and know how to improve and use it to unleash the power of this spell. Ziyue's eyes lit up, and he immediately changed his mind. Instead of killing the wild boar demons, he took another step forward. He appeared 100 feet away. Seeing this, the wild boar demon king only thought that the opponent was afraid of it, so it gathered the strength of the demons again and charged fiercely. Ziyue took another step forward and used the annihilation divine light again. Occasionally, in order to lure the wild boar demons, he would take the initiative to avoid them and let them crash into him. Anyway, with the defensive power of the immortal martial glazed light, even if they used all their strength to crash into him, they wouldn't be able to shake him at all. In this way, Ziyue smashed his divine power again and again. Annihilation divine light, annihilation divine light, annihilation divine light. His powerful strength gave him unparalleled confidence as he shuttled through the dense forest with ease. 3 rays, 4 rays, 5 rays, a total of 7 rays of annihilation divine light fell, and the wild boar demons finally couldn't bear it and collapsed. Even the wild boar demon king showed signs of exhaustion. Knowing that he couldn't force out their potential anymore, Ziyue didn't stay any longer. Under the annihilation divine light, he killed all of them. The cultivation progress of the annihilation divine light has increased to 17% of the uninitiated level. If I continue to work hard with this cultivation speed, I might be able to cultivate this divine power to the uninitiated level in 2 days. Ziyue was secretly delighted. He put away the demon core, lifted his feet, and disappeared again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Ziyue continuously used the distance-shrinking divine power, not only when he was hurrying, but also when he was fighting. His every move was based on this divine power, as if he wanted to engrave it into his bones. Because of this, his progress in cultivating this movement divine ability had been steadily increasing. Uninitiated level 75%, uninitiated level 80%, uninitiated level 85% of course. While using this divine power, he would throw out a ray of annihilation divine light whenever he encountered a demon, whether it was a small demon in the chi refinement stage or a big demon in the spirit detecting stage. Almost none of the demons could withstand a single blow. Therefore, even if he used his soul power to recover his yuan qi from time to time, the amount of his soul power still increased steadily and rapidly. 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. However, because of this, there was no resistance like the wild boar demons. His cultivation progress of the annihilation divine light suddenly slowed down. After half a day, it only increased from 17% of the uninitiated level to 25% of the uninitiated level. This won't do. Ziyue frowned slightly. He had never been afraid to use the greatest malice to figure out his enemy. Once Hua Wenxing made a move, it would be a thunderous blow. In addition to himself, the Gu God sect master, Miao Dingjin, would also make a move. Because he had not encountered Hua Wenxing's strength, he could not guess. However, with the help of Hua Fifan's divine power talisman, he could roughly see Miao Dingjin's strength. He knew that if Miao Dingjin used the divine power golden single chi sword, his great immortal martial handprint would not be able to withstand it. Although the great immortal martial handprint that he had mastered was comparable to a divine power, there was still a certain gap between it and a real divine power. In addition, in terms of cultivation realm, he was not as good as a real divine power. After all, there was a huge gap between the two. Compared to the Beixian faction's sect master Meng Chuan, who had mastered an auxiliary divine power, the Gu God sect's sect master had mastered an offensive divine power. Naturally, his strength was a notch higher. So, even if I have the middle-grade magic treasure, the God-striking ruler, if I'm unable to cultivate the divine annihilation light to the initial stage, advanced stage, or even perfection stage, once I encounter them, I'll fall into an extremely passive situation. Ziyue narrowed his eyes. Although he was about to reach the initial level of shrinking earth, at least it would make him invincible. But in his heart, he naturally hoped that he could have the strength to fight back. I have to speed up. Ziyue felt a little pressure and sighed. If it still doesn't work, wait. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. He thought of the situation where the three divine arts of the celestial martial sect complemented each other and multiplied their power. Let's give it a try. Maybe it will work. Ziyue thought in his heart. His divine sense and immortal martial elemental energy surged at the same time. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, at the moment when the annihilation divine light was formed. He raised his hand and slowly slapped out with his palm. Buzz. In the void, a huge, almost solid palm print was formed rapidly. It was majestic and exuded a terrifying aura. Go! Following which, Ziyue controlled the annihilation divine light and quickly landed on the immortal martial grand palm. Chi! 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 The two divine arts vibrated at the same time. Ziyue's divine sense moved, carefully controlling the immortal martial grand palm and the annihilation divine light to depend on each other and fuse. In the midst of the sizzling sounds, the power of the two divine arts decreased by more than half. It's not working? Ziyue was a little disappointed. Suddenly, he saw that the immortal martial grand palm that he had used had a slight change. Suddenly, there was an additional ball of gold in the palm print. Gradually, the annihilation divine light completely adhered to the palm print, causing the immortal martial grand palm to be shrouded in traces of golden light. Without hesitation, he slapped down with his palm. Rumble! The earth trembled and the sky and the earth turned upside down. A huge, deeply sunken palm print appeared in front of him. The power of this palm strike is slightly stronger than the great immortal martial palm imprint and the annihilation divine light. Although it's not that strong, at least it means that my idea is feasible. Next, I just need to experiment for a period of time and I will definitely be able to greatly increase the power of this newly formed divine art. Ziyue took a deep breath and couldn't help but reveal a trace of joy on his face. He knew that the annihilation divine light was a divine light divine art. It could be attached to other attacks. As for the immortal martial grand palm, it was more stable. The combination of the two divine arts was equivalent to the attachment of a divine light divine art. In addition to Bai Ziyue's understanding of the three ultimate arts of the immortal martial sect, as well as his own cultivation foundation, he was finally able to realize his own idea, successfully executing the three ultimate arts in one go. Chapter 388. Although the great immortal martial palm imprint and silent destruction divine light were compatible, there were still many areas of resistance and stagnation. Even when casting, he had to split his attention to cast two spells at the same time, which was more time-consuming than simply casting one spell. Moreover, the consumption of divine sense and origin energy did not decrease. However, the increase in the power of the spell was real. Finally, Ziyue's immortal spell attack broke through a certain limit and stepped into a new realm. My spirit energy has reached 6.5 million. Cultivation and increasing spirit energy really go hand in hand. Ziyue glanced at the amount of spirit energy and smiled. Then, his mind moved. Consume 6 million spirit energy to ignite 100 acupoints. Ignite. He chose to ignite without hesitation. 100 acupoints shook at the same time and began to be opened and ignited one after another. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. After 100 breaths, the feeling of the acupoints continuously being ignited, origin energy and strength continued to increase. Only then did it stop. The number of acupoints ignited has reached 900. I have completely surpassed the existence who ignited 800 acupoints and caused the heaven and earth phenomenon when he broke through. The density, conciseness, and purity of my origin energy have also increased by a large margin. The feeling of wanting to break through has also become stronger. Ziyue felt the origin energy in his body surging and boiling. He took a deep breath and suppressed the urge to break through. Once again, his mind became clear. I have already cultivated the shrinking earth technique to 87% of the uninitiated level. I will continue to cultivate and strive to reach the beginner level by today. Ziyue's eyes flashed and he took a step forward. Whoosh! Immediately, he appeared more than 100 feet away. As his understanding of the earth shrinking technique deepened, the distance he could cover with each step he took also increased. Now, he had already increased his distance from 1 step to 150 feet. It seems that my continuous killing of monsters has finally attracted the attention of some existences in the Thousand Demon Forest. After using the silent destruction divine light again, and killing a great monster, Ziyue frowned slightly. The Thousand Demon Forest was huge. There were all kinds of monsters and there were countless of them. However, most of the greater demons at the spirit-detecting realm and above had their own areas of influence. Due to this, the entire 10,000 demon forest was divided into countless small areas. At this moment, he had already encountered 3 different types of spirit-detecting stage great demons in this rather spacious forest. Furthermore, Ziyue suddenly looked up. Above the giant tree that covered the sky, numerous bird-type demonic beasts were circling rapidly in the air. With a thought, he quickly used the Great Insight technique. In the blink of an eye, a special feeling appeared in his heart. Everything within a radius of several hundred meters was within his detection range. So many! Ziyue could not help but reveal a trace of surprise on his face. Within the range of his perception, There were at least hundreds of thousands of different kinds of demonic beasts rapidly approaching from all directions. There are hundreds of lesser demons and dozens of greater demons, and they are still increasing as expected. Once a demonic beast reached the spirit-detecting realm and above, it would possess a certain level of intelligence. Although it is not as intelligent as a real human, it has already grasped the way to unite against the enemy. Ziyue's eyes suddenly lit up. In his heart, he was faintly feeling excited. With so many greater demons and lesser demons, although it made him feel a great sense of danger, it also made the battle intent in his heart soar. He wanted to see just how far his limits had reached. Intense Yuan power surged, and a ball of annihilation divine light was once again used. Chi. It was quickly thrown over a large ape several hundred meters away. Spiritual energy plus 38,575. After successfully killing it, Ziyue took a step forward and disappeared like a phantom. Boom! As the ground trembled slightly, a huge earth dragon suddenly soared into the sky where Ziyue was originally standing. It opened its mouth wide, and its shining fangs suddenly closed. It fiercely bit down, but it pounced on empty air. Swoosh! In the sky, a blue bird with bright wings like a rainbow swooped down like a sharp sword. A giant golden snake flicked its tongue and shot out like a bolt of lightning. Dong! 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 One after another, the ferocious beasts rampaged through the forest. The earth trembled and the void shook. Under the crushing pressure of the powerful force, the towering ancient trees seemed to be unable to withstand it and began to rustle. There were even branches and leaves that were falling down rapidly one after another. One. Demonic insects covered the sky and swept out. A bull demon happened to be in their path. In a few breaths, only a white and clean skeleton was left behind. Good. Kill. Ziyue's expression did not change. He executed the earth-shrinking technique to perfection. His figure flashed in the forest and dodged one attack after another. Even if there were attacks that landed on his body occasionally, it was difficult to break the defensive spiritual light on his body. Under the combination of the three techniques, the immortal martial glazed light was comparable to a defensive divine power. Unless a god realm existence attacked at the same time or several peak spirit detecting realm demons attacked at the same time, it would be difficult to break. Then, he continued to use the annihilation divine light. Balls of annihilation divine light fell one after another. 1, 2, 3 The void shook and the earth rumbled. All kinds of terrifying demonic beasts let out shocking roars. As they charged forward, they used their innate demonic arts to cover the void. They intersected and formed a huge spell net that was completely made up of demonic arts. Under the bombardment, it was like an inescapable net that was difficult to dodge. In response, Ziyue only slapped out with his palm. In the battle, although his main goal was to improve the cultivation of the earth-shrinking technique and the annihilation divine light, he would not put himself in danger. The immortal martial great palm was powerful. When he slapped out, it was dozens of feet long and wide. Using offense as defense, it allowed him to dodge many attacks. Annihilation divine light. Annihilation divine light. Annihilation divine light. Ziyue fought like a madman. While using the earth-shrinking technique to dodge many attacks, he crazily shot out beams of annihilation divine light as if they were free. One after another, wave after wave. Ziyue had the advantage in terms of speed. In addition, the annihilation divine light he used was a divine power after all. Its power was unparalleled and unparalleled. Even peak spirit-detecting realm demons would not be able to block one attack. 5, 10, 15. Spirit-detecting realm demons fell one after another. Immediately, the originally powerful demonic beasts were stunned. Traces of fear gathered, and as time passed, it quickly spread. Then, finally, at a certain moment, Roar, a late-stage spirit-detecting realm demonic beast that was neither a horse nor a cow, let out a howl and quickly fled in the direction it came from. As if there was a chain reaction, in the blink of an eye, several spirit-detecting realm demons showed signs of retreating. At this moment, a white shadow flashed past like lightning and directly charged in front of the first demon to retreat. It slapped out with its claw. Bang! That late-stage, spirit-detecting realm demon did not have time to react before its head exploded and turned into a bloody mist. It fell heavily to the ground, dead. Then, the white shadow revealed its figure. It was a huge white tiger that was 10 meters tall and 50 meters long. Roar! It let out a loud roar that shook the void. Under the pressure of the powerful sound waves, some of the low-level demonic beasts went limp and fell to the ground, losing the ability to resist. Even the great demons had looks of reverence in their eyes. A god realm demon. A white tiger demon. Xiu's pupils shrank, but he did not show too much surprise on his face. Long ago, when he noticed that a group of demons was gathering to besiege him, including many late-stage and peak-stage spirit-detecting realm demons, he knew that there must be a god realm demon behind it. The only thing that made him a little serious was the identity of the tiger demon. In the first place, demonic beasts were stronger than humans at the same cultivation level. Tiger demons were the kings of the demons and were even stronger than ordinary demonic beasts. According to his understanding of the deity realm cultivators, they were all at the early stage of the deity realm. If Reverend Yuan was the weakest, then Reverend Mengchuan, who had mastered a divine power and had a middle-grade Dharma treasure, the northern profound divine saber, was stronger. However, Reverend Mengchuan was at most on par with ordinary deity realm demons. If he really fought with this white tiger demon, he would not be able to defeat it. Perhaps only the Gu God sect master Miaodingzhen, who had mastered an offensive divine ability, the Golden Gung single chi sword, Xiu had not met before, could be on par with this white tiger demon. In other words, if we divide the early-stage God realm cultivators into 3 classes, Reverend Yuan is the weakest and belongs to the 3rd class. Reverend Mengchuan is stronger and belongs to the 2nd class. Miaodingzhen, who has mastered an offensive divine ability, is stronger and is the 1st class. As for this white tiger, his strength is 1st class. Xiu immediately made some judgments. Even though it wasn't very accurate and was only a rough division of each level in his heart, it was enough for him to distinguish the strength of each cultivator. Xiu's heart tightened. He immediately glanced at the attribute panel. Sure enough, I've reached the entry level of shrinking earth into an inch. My soul energy has increased again. It has increased to 7.2 million soul energy. Xiu had been fighting crazily before. He had felt that his speed had soared when he used shrinking earth into an inch. He had already guessed it. Now, he had reached the entry level. The white tiger demon, who was at the 1st class of the early-stage God realm, gave him a certain amount of pressure. In addition, he judged that the white tiger's speed was not much slower than when he used his divine ability. Therefore, he thought of something. Consume 995612 soul energy to upgrade shrinking earth into an inch to the small success. If it's only at the small success, it shouldn't make me lose focus for too long. Let's go all out. Chapter 389. Upgrade. Thinking of this, Xiu no longer hesitated and directly chose to upgrade. In an instant, Xiu felt that his understanding and comprehension of shrinking earth into an inch had improved a lot. All kinds of cultivation experience and casting tips made his mind clear. And he also seemed to have gone through countless days and nights of bitter cultivation to cultivate shrinking earth into an inch, which was far better than when he had just started. Even his legs seemed to have undergone some kind of special enhancement, becoming lighter and more agile. Shrinking earth into an inch has reached the small success level. Now my speed will soar again and be far better than before. Ziue felt a burst of joy in his heart. The movement technique, length contraction, was extremely useful to him. Even though it was only at the initial success stage of length contraction, it was enough to increase his chances of facing White Tiger. At least, he could run away if he couldn't beat it. Who are you? How dare you violate the agreement and kill in my demon's forest? At that moment, a deep and sharp voice that sounded like sandpaper suddenly came out of White Tiger's mouth. Ziue, who had just recovered from the upgrade of shrinking earth into an inch, suddenly had an idea. It could speak? Only then did he remember that when the strange creatures reached the spirit-detecting realm, their intelligence would be greatly improved and they would have the ability to think independently. If they upgraded again and reached the God realm, they would be no different from ordinary humans in terms of wisdom and learning. Learning the human language and speaking it was like learning a foreign language for them. It was not difficult at all. Therefore, it was very normal for a God realm demon to be able to speak. You're courting death. White Tiger saw that Ziue was absent-minded and vaguely felt that there was a special change in Ziue's aura, which made him feel a little uneasy. White Tiger immediately became angry. White Tiger flew, and sand and stones flew. He quickly rushed in front of Ziue and fiercely slapped at him with his huge tiger claws. Before the tiger claws fell, the unique aura of a God Realm Demon King had already crushed down. Roar! Tiger King roared. Even the void seemed to have been frozen, and there was even a frightening power that could frighten one's mind being released. Ziue's mind was in turmoil, and his eyes were twitching. He felt a great threat. His heart trembled. His divine sense, which had grown to the limit, was still very powerful, so he was not really frightened. Retreat. Ziue used shrinking earth into an inch and quickly retreated. Boom. The battlefield, which was already ravaged and barren, became even more messy. A large area of land quickly collapsed. White Tiger Great Demon's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise when he missed with his palm. However, he did not hesitate to give chase once again. Indeed, after achieving initial success in length contraction, my speed is much faster than White Tiger's. As long as I'm careful not to be hit, I'm born to be invincible. Ziue's heart relaxed. He was shocked. A large amount of black sand turned into a black shadow that filled the sky. It rapidly swept towards Bai Ziue in a mighty manner. Bai Ziue quickly took another step forward. Swoosh! He quickly appeared dozens of feet away. The moment Ziue dodged, a large amount of black sand quickly swept over and landed on 2 early-stage spirit-detecting realm demons and more than 10 chi refinement realm demons. Chi, countless wailing sounds could be heard. Regardless of whether they were demons or demons, they were quickly corroded by the black sand and turned into a pool of blood. What a powerful demonic art! Bai Ziue's eyes flickered slightly as he determined that the might of White Tiger's Dharma spell had already exceeded his immortal martial palm. He raised his foot again and took another step. With a swoosh, he quickly rushed into the middle of a group of demons. Roar! 3 early-stage, spirit-detecting realm demons and more than 20 demons immediately attacked him fiercely. Ziue's expression did not change. He quickly shot out a ball of spiritual light that he had been preparing for a long time. Annihilation Divine Light. The divine light was like lightning, and it was extremely fast. It quickly rushed in front of White Tiger. You can't even withstand a single blow. White Tiger's bell-like eyes flashed with obvious contempt. A blob of sanguine light rapidly rose from his body. Pwah! The annihilation divine light collided with the sanguine beam. The sanguine beam shook violently and blocked the annihilation divine light. Immediately following that, a large swathe of black gauze transformed into a black shadow that swept over. Ziue's figure flashed and he took another step, appearing in the middle of another group of demons. Behind him, the group of demonic beasts that had just charged at Bai Ziue were all engulfed by the black sand and corroded into pools of blood. Courting death. White Tiger was infuriated as he glared with widened eyes. He opened his mouth and immediately, a pitch-black rock that resembled a lump of metal charged out. The black rock expanded with the wind and turned into a gigantic boulder. It rapidly smashed towards Ziyue. However, at the instant White Tiger opened his mouth, Ziyue had already determined the trajectory of his attack. He quickly disappeared. When he appeared again, he appeared in the middle of a group of great demons. However, at this moment, the group of great demons had learned their lesson. At the instant his figure appeared, they did not hesitate and quickly fled in all directions. Upon seeing this, Ziyue's eyes could not help but flash a look of astonishment. He was ultimately unwilling to let go of this wave of soul energy. He immediately struck out with his palm, turning 3 mid-stage spirit-channeling realm demons, 2 early-stage spirit-channeling realm demons, and about 8 lesser demons into meat paste. And at this moment White Tiger had predicted this. Amidst the flying sand and pebbles, he rapidly charged towards Ziyue. At the instant he charged over, roar! Tiger King's roar. Above White Tiger's head, the king word flashed with a ghostly light. It seemed to rush out of its head and rapidly transformed into a seal that imprinted itself on Ziyue. Treasure stabilizing divine light. Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. As he retreated, a blob of spiritual light shot out. Chi. The treasure-stabilizing divine light collided with the king word seal. After a slight pause, it dissipated. However, this magic art had bought him some time. He took a step forward and was hundreds of feet away. After thinking for a while, he could not resist testing the power of the God-striking ruler. No matter what, White Tiger was the same as Miaodingzhen. They were both first-rate existences in the early-stage God realm. He could use this opportunity to test the effect of the God-striking ruler. Thus, a pitch-black ruler suddenly flashed and struck out brazenly. White Tiger was suddenly horrified as he felt a huge threat. He quickly turned into a white shadow and moved hundreds of feet away. Ziyue's consciousness flashed and the God-striking ruler followed him like a shadow. Furthermore, the treasure-stabilizing divine light and the immortal martial palm landed one after another. At the moment when the treasure-stabilizing divine light landed on White Tiger, the immortal martial palm slapped out horizontally and blocked White Tiger's advance. Suddenly, White Tiger paused for a moment. It was this moment. A black beam flashed on the God-striking ruler as it slashed down like a sword. It struck White Tiger's head ruthlessly. "Awo!" White Tiger wailed and his tiger face revealed an extremely painful expression. The powerful attack that originated from the divine sense caused its entire body to tremble. Its huge body rolled violently on the ground and crashed into a huge tree, easily smashing it into pieces. After a full 2 breaths, White Tiger Great Demon recovered. However, there was still a look of fear in his eyes. This God-striking ruler is worthy of being a middle-grade magic treasure. Its power is really strong. Even the White Tiger Great Demon, whose strength is at the first level of the early divine realm, couldn't withstand it and needed 2 breaths of time to recover. Even though he had expected that the power of the middle-grade magic treasure, the God-striking ruler, which specialized in attacking the consciousness and spirit, would be extraordinary. However, when he saw the power and effect of this attack, he was still surprised. The only problem was that the elemental energy required to use this magic treasure was too terrifying. Even with his abundant elemental energy, his elemental energy would be exhausted after 3 or 4 attacks. Of course, this wasn't a big deal to him. With sufficient soul energy, he could replenish his elemental energy in an instant. Immediately, he felt even more confident towards White Tiger, Hua Wenxing, and Miaodingzhen, who was about to take action. Damn it! Who is this person? His aura doesn't seem strong. Not only is his speed amazing, but he also has such a powerful magic treasure? White Tiger was frightened and couldn't help but want to retreat. Ziyue's attack had really frightened him. After seeing the power of the god striking ruler, Ziyue was satisfied. With a slight move, he kept it again. Since he was sure that he could defeat White Tiger, he naturally wanted to use White Tiger to cultivate his divine light of obliteration as soon as possible. Therefore, he stretched out his hand and pointed again. A ball of divine light of obliteration quickly rushed out. He doesn't have enough elemental energy. White Tiger's eyes flickered. Even if an aperture opening realm cultivator has abundant elemental energy, how much can he have? This person has fought with other great demons and used that magic treasure just now. Although the magic treasure is powerful, it must have put a lot of pressure on him. Therefore, he only dared to use one attack. Now that he doesn't have enough elemental energy, he can't hold on. White Tiger originally wanted to retreat, but at this moment, he was invigorated and his confidence increased. He quickly used the black sand again and swept it towards Ziyue. At the same time, the black stone turned into a huge boulder and quickly smashed towards Ziyue. Shrinking Earth. Ziyue dodged. The small success stage of Shrinking Earth allowed his speed to reach an astonishing level, far surpassing White Tiger. Therefore, he was always able to dodge his opponent's attack and advance and retreat freely on the battlefield. Then, he would find an opportunity to shoot out a beam of divine light of obliteration. 1, 2, 3 Divine light of obliteration, divine light of obliteration, divine light of obliteration. Ziyue didn't seem to be tired or afraid of exhaustion. He constantly shot out beams of divine light of obliteration. Chapter 390. And it was because of White Tiger's resistance that Ziyue's divine rays of obliteration could be fully unleashed. The timely feedback allowed his understanding and insights of the divine power to rapidly improve. Uninitiated 30%, uninitiated 35%, uninitiated 40% to him, White Tiger was the best sparring partner. It constantly pushed the cultivation of his divine power forward. Time passed, and in a blink of an eye, several minutes had passed. How is this possible? Even I would not be able to withstand the use of so many Dharma spells. How can a cultivator at the Aperture Awakening realm do it? White Tiger, who was initially barely holding on and hoping that Ziyue would be drained of his essence energy to counterattack, gradually turned flustered. Even if the strength of his opponent's attacks were not high, his defensive techniques were enough to withstand them. However, the continuous attacks and the fact that he maintained his defensive demonic technique drained him of his essence energy. Furthermore, the occasional attacks made him unable to withstand it. I'll let you off this time. I won't let you off the next time. Unable to hit him and having to lift him up, White Tiger finally gave up on Yufeng. With a loud roar, he turned and fled. It wasn't easy to find a sparring partner that can withstand a beating. Finally, my divine rays of obliteration's cultivation speed has increased rapidly. You want to leave now? No way. Ziyue's calm eyes flashed a look of anger. He raised his foot and took a step forward. Shua. He quickly chased after him. Immediately following that, a blob of divine rays of obliteration flew out. Chi. 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 The divine rays of obliteration rapidly drained White Tiger's sanguine defense, causing it to falter. What do you want? White Tiger wailed as he tried his best to escape. However, there was no way for him to escape. Ziyue did not answer as he blasted out beam after beam of divine rays of obliteration. I'll fight it out with you. White Tiger roared and quickly counterattacked. Then, he let out a mighty tiger roar, summoning the surrounding fey beasts to surround Ziyue. Ziyue retreated, but his actions did not stop. Intense spiritual light flashed as the numerous demons that were loitering in the surroundings finally charged forward out of their instinctive fear of White Tiger. However, there were even more greater demons who were carefully hiding in the surroundings with flickering eyes. They could sense White Tiger's helplessness and knew that the human had the upper hand in the battle. Immediately, their thoughts began to stir. Ziyue circled the battlefield with ease. From time to time, he would strike out with his palm to kill the demons that came too close. Beams of divine light of obliteration would always strike White Tiger's body. How is that possible? Don't you need to consume your elemental energy? White Tiger roared in horror. His mind was shaken and he was on the brink of a mental breakdown. My elemental force is unlimited, Ziyue replied coldly. His eyes shimmered as he carefully observed the various changes that occurred when the divine light of obliteration clashed with White Tiger's defensive halo. His understanding of the divine light of obliteration also deepened bit by bit. Then, according to his own understanding and comprehension, he slowly improved the method of using the divine light of annihilation. Suddenly, the power of the annihilation divine light also increased gradually. That's impossible! That's impossible! Among the human cultivators I know, not to mention the enlightened immortal masters, even the deity realm experts have a limited source of power. For you to cast such a powerful Dharma spell, it would already be considered powerful if you can cast it more than 10 times. To continue casting it, you have to use a desperate method, burn your psyche, and sacrifice your life. Why did your offensive strength increase? White Tiger's worldview was turned upside down as his mind exploded. He completely broke down. All he could do was let out a series of ghostly wails as he desperately fled. He wanted to escape to the 100,000 mountains that was separated by a river. He had always believed that he could live a carefree life in this place, far better than the 100,000 mountains where numerous demon monarchs resided. But at that moment, he was completely flustered as he felt despair. What was originally a short distance now looked like a natural chasm that was impossible to cross. Ziyue cast length contraction and followed him like a shadow. He maintained a safe distance as he constantly cast beams of divine light of obliteration. 15, 20, 25 poof. Finally, White Tiger's demon essence was exhausted and he could not maintain the defensive spiritual light. Ziyue stretched out his hand again. A ball of spiritual light brewed. Surrender, surrender. I'm willing to surrender and become your demon pet for you to command. White Tiger wailed as he cried out in pain and despair. For a God realm demon monarch, it was absolutely humiliating to surrender to a human cultivator, especially one whose strength was only at the aperture enlightening realm. However, if he did not surrender, he would die. He did not want to die. It was not easy to become a demon monarch. How could he want to die? After weighing the pros and cons, he could only choose to surrender. Ziyue was slightly stunned. He had never thought of subduing this tiger demon. Ordinary beast taming methods couldn't subdue this tiger demon, whose strength had reached the early stage of the divine realm and was still at the first level. Even if it chose to submit at this time, once there was no way to subdue it, it would inevitably choose to counterattack after it recovered. At that time, if he was not prepared, it would be very dangerous. However, if I choose to subdue this white tiger demon, the benefits are also great. Not only is it equivalent to having a helper with the strength of the early stage of the God realm, but it can also be used as a sparring partner to quickly improve the progress of my divine sense cultivation. The benefits are great. Moreover, it's not like I don't have a way to counterbalance it. Ziyue pondered for a while and quickly reacted. He said directly, "In that case, don't resist." As he said that, he waved his hand and a bronze ring quickly rushed out. In the blink of an eye, the bronze ring rapidly expanded and hung over the White Tiger Demon's head. White Tiger Demon's eyes flickered. He could feel the function of Ziyue's spiritual weapon. It should be mainly used to trap the enemy and could seal his demon chi. However, his demon chi was insufficient now, so it did not make much of a difference whether it was sealed or not. Therefore, after thinking for a while, he chose not to resist. Otherwise, with only a supreme-grade spiritual weapon, even if his combat strength was less than 10%, it could not trap him. The beast-trapping hoop landed on White Tiger's head, sealing his demonic essence seal and locking him in place. Then, with a thought, Zeus summoned a golden pagoda. Demon-subduing pagoda. The demon-subduing pagoda soared into the sky and a ball of golden light rushed out and fell on the White Tiger Demon's body. What is this? No. The White Tiger Demon suddenly panicked and had a bad premonition. It had originally thought that Zeus would use the beast-taming technique to subdue it. It was confident that with its realm that was far superior to Zeus, even if it was subdued temporarily, it would be able to find an opportunity to break the beast-taming technique and escape in the future. However, the moment the demon-subduing pagoda rushed out, he knew that he had miscalculated. He hurriedly tried his best to resist. The beast-trapping ring on his head immediately vibrated, as if it was about to be torn apart. You still want to go back on your words? It's too late. Zeus's expression did not change. His immortal martial elemental force kept gushing out. The demon-subduing pagoda's golden light quickly enveloped the White Tiger Demon. Under the strong suction force, the White Tiger Demon howled and turned into a stream of light that was quickly sucked into the pagoda. With a slight wave, the demon-subduing pagoda fell into his hand. The demon-subduing pagoda is a natural restraint against demonic beasts. It can also enslave and control demonic beasts that are sucked into the demon-subduing pagoda without worrying about backlash. Even if this White Tiger Demon's strength has reached the early stage of the God realm, as long as it is in the demon-subduing pagoda, it will be difficult for it to escape. Next, I just need to continue supplying elemental force to activate the demon-subduing pagoda and plant an enslavement brand in its soul. Once the brand is planted, its life and death will be completely under my control. It will not be able to resist at all. Previously, it took me an hour to enslave the blue-eyed Silver Wolf King at the middle stage of the spirit-detecting realm. This White Tiger Demon's strength has reached the early stage of the God realm, far stronger than the Silver Wolf King. I estimate that I will need an entire day to plant an enslavement brand and control it. As Zeus thought to himself, he hung the demon-subduing pagoda on his waist. As the immortal martial elemental force in his body surged, he diverted a portion of his energy to activate the demon-subduing pagoda and began refining it. Due to the continuous consumption of soul energy and the recovery of elemental force, the increase is not much. It has only increased from the original 6,200,000 to 6,900,000. On the other hand, the cultivation progress of the Annihilation Divine Ray has increased very quickly. It has now reached the uninitiated level of 67%. Indeed, with the feedback from the sparring partner, the progress is much faster than normal practice. Zeus glanced at the attribute panel with a satisfied look on his face. If it was not for the continuous training of the White Tiger Demon, the cultivation progress of this divine ability would probably only be half of what it was now. However, the reason why it is so smooth is mainly because my speed far exceeds the White Tiger Demon's. Zeus knew very well that the reason why he could gain the upper hand against the White Tiger Demon and use it as his sparring partner was because of his speed. If he had not raised length to inch to the small success stage in advance, his speed at the entry level of length to inch would at best be on par with the White Tiger Demon. And with the combat strength that the White Tiger Demon had displayed, even if he could win, it would not be that easy. Not to mention constantly using the Annihilation Divine Ray to raise the cultivation progress of this divine ability. Therefore, I should continue maintaining it. Zeus's mind stirred slightly as he immediately cast his gaze on the divine ability, length to inch. Spending 1998, 412 soul energy points to raise length to inch from the small success stage to the large success stage. From the entry level to the small success stage is 1,000,000 soul energy. From the small success stage to the large success stage is 2,000,000 soul energy. Then, from the large success stage to perfection stage, it would be 4,000,000 soul energy. And the amount of soul energy I have now is 6,900,000. That's enough. Ziua had always been straightforward when doing things. Furthermore, he was still in the 10,000 demon forest. With the god realm White Tiger subdued by him, he could do as he pleased in this place. There was definitely no shortage of soul energy, so he was extremely confident. His mind stirred slightly. Spending 400,000,000 soul energy points to raise length to inch from the large success stage to perfection stage. Chapter 391. We've finally arrived at the ancient desolate region. It's been 30 years and I'm finally back. I'm very different now. Although it took me a long time, 20 days, and I've been attacked by the endless wind, I've finally arrived. A huge, majestic warship whistled through the layers of astral winds, rapidly advancing. On the warship, a dozen figures who were sitting with their legs crossed stood up and looked at the approaching land in the distance with excitement. As usual, we'll divide into two teams. One team will stay here and explore the astral wind canyon from the edge. The other team will go to the ancient desolate city in the ancient desolate region to preside over the disciple selection. Exploring the astral wind canyon is fraught with danger. Even I have the possibility of dying. However, because there are many immortal cultivation sects buried in the canyon, including a holy land of immortal cultivation, the Transcendence sect, which is not weaker than our Celestial Spirit sect, there is a high possibility of a great harvest. However, the disciple selection is also very important. It's a big deal that even the nascent soul realm patriarchs pay attention to. There can't be any mistakes. Once a peerless genius appears, the sect will reward him. So, Jin Heng, Zhao Ben, you two choose yourselves to explore the astral wind canyon or preside over the disciple selection. Right at this moment, a round-faced old man with white eyebrows and a rosy complexion spoke. By the way, I have to remind you that once you choose to explore the astral wind canyon, you can't touch the reward for the disciple selection. Once you choose the disciple selection, don't be jealous of the rewards of the disciples who explore the astral wind canyon. Then, the round-faced elder said again, I choose to go to the astral wind canyon. There are many more experts in our area compared to here. The surrounding 800 miles have already been explored by others. Here, the strongest expert is only at the middle stage of the God realm. They can't take away the good stuff, so this is our chance. Zhao Ben did not hesitate at all and said straightforwardly, in that case, I'll choose to preside over the disciple selection. It's safer and more secure. Moreover, I can make contact with some of the potential disciples in advance. Maybe in the future, I'll come to ask for help. Am I right? Junior brother Hua? Jin Hing thought for a while, and then looked at an ordinary-looking young man below. Senior brother Jin, you must be joking. Compared with the previous generation of disciples, I'm nothing. The young man smiled humbly and said, Junior brother's performance after joining the sect is obvious to all of us. Not only would a celestial phenomenon appear when he broke through, but he would also attract the attention of primordial soul patriarchs. His future was limitless. I reckon that in less than 100 years, he will surpass me. Jin Hing said with admiration. The young man couldn't help but smirk and whisper, 30 years have passed, I wonder how extraordinary is doing. With his talent, I'm sure he'll be able to fight for the disciple position this time and reunite us father and son. The warship moved forward in the boundless astral winds. Soon, it charged out of the sea of clouds and officially arrived in the ancient desolate region. The warship stopped in one place for a moment, and then it soared into the sky again, tearing through the sky at a speed much faster than when it was in the sea of clouds. I didn't expect 2 days to pass so quickly. After 2 days of hard work, I still haven't mastered the divine light of annihilation. At the center of the forest of 10,000 demons, Ziyue stood tall with a regretful expression on his face. However, if it's really a harvest, it's definitely not a small one. It's even huge. Ziyue felt a little relieved. In the past 2 days, he had not only mastered the divine light of shrinking earth to inches, but also reached the great perfection realm. He had also subdued a god realm great demon and made it his subordinate. Thinking of this with a thought, a golden pagoda rushed out. As the pagoda flashed, a huge white tiger rushed out from it. This huge white tiger was the king of the forest of 10,000 demons, the great demon white tiger of the early stage god realm. Master! The great demon white tiger looked at Ziyue with unwillingness and awe and said respectfully, "Well, do you have a real name?" Ziyue nodded slightly and asked casually, "Little demon. Master, please give me a name." The great demon white tiger was about to answer when he suddenly said cleverly, "In that case, I'll call you Hudali from now on." Ziyue nodded. The demon-subduing pagoda flashed again and kept the great demon white tiger. He intended to use it as a secret trump card. At a critical moment it might be of great use. In addition to these gains, my cultivation of the divine light of obliteration has improved a lot. Now it has reached 91% of the divine light of obliteration. At most, I only need half a day of practice to reach the divine light of obliteration. Ziyue pondered silently. This rate of cultivation progress could not be said to be slow. Ordinary cultivators, even if they were deity realm experts, would need at least 2 months of hard work to cultivate a divine ability to a beginner's level. This was not because Ziyue's cultivation talent was better than others. It was because he did not have to worry about the consumption of his primordial energy when he was cultivating. Moreover, he happened to have a sparring partner who could completely resist the divine light of obliteration. The amount of time saved in between was enormous. In addition, the number of my lit acupoints has increased from 800 to 1,000. Ziyue sensed the number of acupoints in his body. Previously, when he was besieged by the great demon white tiger, he had lit up 100 acupoints. After subduing the great demon white tiger and accumulating a large amount of primordial energy, he lit up another 100 acupoints. Now, he had lit up 1,000 acupoints. 1,000 acupoints shone brightly and vibrated at the same time. Immediately, a surge of power was emitted. It greatly increased his strength. Lighting up 1,000 acupoints at the aperture awakening realm. At least in the ancient desolate region, I have never heard of anyone who could do it. However, it was likely that there were also people in the outer regions who had such achievement. The number of acupoints they have lit up is even higher. All of a sudden, Ziyue recalled the map of acupoints that recorded 1,080 acupoints. He already knew that the heavenly acupoint map was obtained from an ancient relic in the astral wind canyon by a senior cultivator of the Chaoyang sect. Since the appearance of the 9 heavenly acupoints map, it meant that someone had ignited the number of acupoints in their body to 1,800. Therefore, Ziyue quickly restrained the complacency in his heart. Compared to those true geniuses, he was still far from them. However, my primordial energy is now at 8,800,000 primordial energy. It is enough to light up the number of acupoints in the heavenly acupoint map and complete the heavenly acupoint map. Ziyue suddenly became excited. 1,080 acupoints could complete the heavenly acupoint map. Not only would it allow his celestial martial origin power to transform into the heavenly acupoint map, but it would also be able to evolve a heavenly acupoint defensive technique to automatically protect his body. It was equivalent to having an innate defensive technique. Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated. Consuming 4,800,000 primordial energy to light up 80 acupoints. Light them up. Ziyue took a deep breath and chose to light them up without hesitation. Buzz. In an instant, the 80 acupoints in his body shook at the same time and quickly opened up. Then, they were quickly filled with primordial energy and lit up one after another. 10 acupoints, 20 acupoints, 30 acupoints, 10 breaths, 20 breaths, 30 breaths. Soon, all 80 acupoints were lit up. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Then, the moment all 80 acupoints were ignited, the 1080 acupoints in by Ziyue's body suddenly shook violently. At the same time, the shining acupoints were like the sun, moon, and stars, emitting a dazzling light. It was also like a heavenly acupoint map with 1080 formation plates was rapidly activated at this moment. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The surging celestial martial origin power boiled and rolled, as if it had been baked by the great Tao furnace and shined by the stars in the sky. It rapidly transformed. It turned into a special primordial energy that was brewing glazed golden liquid and emitted starlight. This special primordial energy was dazzling, beautiful, perfect, complete, and powerful. It was the heavenly acupoint map. Buzz. Then, a layer of heavenly acupoint protective technique quickly rose and enveloped Ziyue like a sphere. Heavenly acupoint defensive technique, heavenly acupoint protective technique. A hint of understanding flashed in Ziyue's eyes. After thinking for a while, a flying sword rushed out quickly with a thought. The flying sword spun, then turned into a sharp beam of light and shot over at a high speed. Boom! It slammed heavily into the heavenly acupoint protective technique. The heavenly acupoint protective technique's spiritual light turned slightly and evolved into a heavenly acupoint map. It easily deflected the attack. It's equivalent to the full force attack of a peak enlightening celestial master. As expected, it can't break this layer of defensive spiritual light. Ziyue repaired the heavenly acupoint protective technique. The flying sword flashed again and slammed down heavily. He increased the power of the flying sword's attack bit by bit, testing the limits of the heavenly acupoint protective technique. Boom, boom, boom. When he increased the power of the flying sword's attack to the level of a deity realm expert, the heavenly acupoint protective technique finally broke and collapsed. With the transformation of my celestial martial origin energy into heavenly acupoint force, the power of my various divine senses has also increased. Now, when I use the flying sword together with the one sword to break all skills, I can exert a power comparable to the full force attack of an early divine realm expert. As for the power of the great immortal martial handprint, it was comparable to the all-out attack of a second-class early divine realm expert. In terms of defense, the heavenly protective technique could block an attack from an expert at the early stage of the divine realm, and the celestial martial glazed light could block an all-out attack from a second-class expert at the early stage of the divine realm. With the combination of these two techniques, even if it couldn't block an attack from a first-class expert at the early stage of the divine realm, it was enough to greatly increase my survivability. Moreover, I also have a divine sense that has reached the consummate level, distance shrinking. Ziyue soon had a clear judgment of his strength. Chapter 392. Ziyue's speed was very fast when he used the earth-shrinking technique to perfection. It was so fast that even he couldn't tell what level of strength he was at. Therefore, Ziyue revealed a satisfied expression. At the very least, he was already invincible in terms of innate talent. Even if he could not win, he could escape easily with his extreme speed. Furthermore, his own strength was not weak either. Also, after 2 days, I've also cultivated the great observation art to the beginner level. I still have 4 million spiritual energy left. That's enough. Ziyue glanced at the attribute panel again, and tapped on the great observation art again. Consumed 139,568 spiritual energy to upgrade the great observation art to perfection. Upgrade. Ziyue pondered for a moment and chose to upgrade it. This spell was considered the strongest among the detection spells. When it was activated, it was silent and the spiritual energy waves were extremely weak. Unless the same detection spell was used, it would be extremely difficult to detect the spying of this spell. In many cases, it could play an unexpected role. As such, when he had sufficient spiritual energy, he took the opportunity to raise the level of this spell. In an instant, Ziyue's mind shook. Countless cultivation experiences related to the great observation art, the principle of the spell's operation, the spell's structure. They all flowed into his mind, allowing his understanding of this spell to reach an unprecedented peak. And it was as if he had really gone through countless days and nights of cultivation, diligently practicing this spell millions of times, directly raising it to the limit of what he could cultivate, the level of perfection. The great observation art has reached perfection. Ziyue's mind moved. As the power of the heavenly cycle fluctuated slightly, the great observation art was silently used by him. In an instant, within the entire 10,000 demon forest, all kinds of mixed auras and different types of monsters spread out. Their positions and strength levels were all under his detection. There was nowhere to hide. I thought that most of the monsters above the spirit detecting realm in the entire 10,000 demon forest had been killed by me. I didn't expect there to be so many big monsters. Bai Ziyue's face revealed a hint of surprise. During this trip to the 10,000 demon forest, the number of spirit-detecting realm demons that had died at his hands definitely exceeded 100, and there were even more low-level demons. He'd originally thought that most of the greater demons had either died or fled. In the end, the number of greater demons that appeared within his perception now numbered in the dozens. Just as he was sighing with emotion, Ziyue's expression suddenly changed and he looked over. Sizzle, in the distant horizon, a huge battleship that was hundreds of feet long and about 70 to 80 feet wide, broke through the air waves and whistled through the sound barrier. Then, it disappeared into the layers of clouds. Warship? Is this the warship of the Celestial Spirit sect? Ziyue was startled, but he quickly reacted. There were no warships in the entire ancient, desolate region. There might have been some in the past, but it had been destroyed by the cataclysm more than 7,000 years ago. Now, this kind of warship that could carry dozens of experts and soar high in the clouds could only appear in the outer realms. Naturally, the identity of this warship was self-evident. It was the floating warship of the Celestial Spirit sect. The experts of the Celestial Spirit sect have arrived. The competition for the 12 places will begin soon. It seems that it's time for me to go back as soon as possible. Ziyue knew that before the disciples of the Celestial Spirit sect selected the places, there would be a registration process for the bone examination. In fact, this was to prevent people who were over 50 years old from participating in the competition for the 12 places. Moreover, there was only one day to register for the bone examination. Once the time was over, the other party would not wait for him, and he would lose the opportunity to participate. Thus, he would lose the opportunity to step on the warship and go to the outer realms. Thinking of this, he narrowed his eyes and quickly took a step forward. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, he had crossed a distance of more than 1,000 feet and appeared 500 meters away. After one step, another step. Ziyue used his divine ability to shrink the land into an inch and quickly rushed to the ancient desolate city. 2 days later, the ancient desolate city was much more lively than before. Not only were there more people gathered. Moreover, the deity realm experts of various immortal cultivation sects had also arrived one after another. Zhaoyang Dao Faction's sect master, Zhenren Wanhong, Beixian Faction's sect master, Zhenren Mengchuan, Jihua Immortal Palace's palace master, Zhenren Yushu, Gu God Sect's sect master, Zhenren Miao. There were more than 10 divine realm experts gathered in the ancient desolation city. The arrival of the celestial spirit sect's floating warship immediately attracted everyone's attention. Countless fiery gazes were directed at the floating warship outside the city. He was also guessing the number and strength of the heavenly spirit sect experts who had descended this time. Then, as the deity realm experts of the immortal cultivation sects stepped forward to welcome the disciples of the celestial spirit sect off the ship, the news of the experts quickly spread. The seven-star godly sword immortal Jinheng, the three immortals Zhong, the heaven, earth, spirit, and Su, the three immortals, the mandarin duck divine saber immortal Tianqi. In the last generation's competition for the 12 places, the peerless genius, profound Shenghua, the immortal, there are a total of 7 God Realm Masters and 2 Immortal Masters at the peak of the Enlightenment Realm. However, why are there only 6 perfected deities and 2 Immortal Masters at the peak of the Enlightened Aperture stage? Who was the other person? Why didn't he appear? The other one is the strongest among them. I heard that he has reached the late stage of the deity realm. He alone can defeat all the experts in the entire ancient, desolate realm. His name is Immortal Tianhe, and he is personally guarding the floating warship. He didn't appear. I heard that this is not their full strength. There are 9 deity realm experts who got off the warship at the entrance of the Astral Wind Canyon. Hiss! They are too strong. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and exclaimed. Zhua walked on the streets of the ancient, desolate city with a dignified look on his face. Immortal Jinheng, who was at the peak of the middle stage of the deity realm, Immortal Susan, who was at the middle stage of the deity realm, and even Immortal Tianhe, who was at the late stage of the deity realm. Most importantly, Hua Wenxing had really come this time. Moreover, he had broken through to the deity realm and became an immortal at the early stage of the deity realm. Even though he had expected this and had made preparations to deal with it, when the other party really appeared, he still felt that it was a bit troublesome. I hope there won't be any unnecessary twists and turns, otherwise, in his heart, Bai Ziyue had already prepared for the worst. In a large hall, a group of people sat opposite each other. I didn't expect that you would have such an achievement in just 30 years. You have reached the deity realm and become an immortal at the same level as me. The sect master of the Gu God sect, Miao Dingjin, looked at Hua Wenxing and said with a little emotion, compared to the ancient desolate realm, the celestial spirit sect is located in a place with great talents and abundant resources. Naturally, the cultivation speed is much faster. It's a pity that I have wasted too much time here. I only set foot in the celestial spirit sect after 40 years of cultivation. The grade of the cultivation method I practiced is far inferior to the celestial spirit true skill of the celestial spirit sect. In the end, I had to break through to the deity realm after igniting 720 acupoints. If I could cultivate in the celestial spirit sect from a young age like the other brothers, I would have absolute confidence to break through to the deity realm with the strength of igniting 800 acupoints. Then, my strength and potential would be far better than now. Hua Wenxing said with a little regret. Miao Dingjin smiled awkwardly and said unnaturally, even so, I have already surpassed all the deity realm immortals in the ancient, desolate realm. If I can break through to the deity realm with the strength of igniting 500 acupoints in the future, I will be very satisfied. The great elder of the Gu God sect, Miao Changchun, said respectfully. What do you know? How can the outside world be compared to a barren place like the ancient desolate realm? The number of acupoints ignited is directly related to the strength and potential of a cultivator. If one's foundation is not strong enough, it will be many times more difficult to break through to the golden core realm and primordial spirit realm. Hua Wenxing snorted coldly, then frowned and looked at Miao Dingjin, asking, by the way, where is my son, Fan Fan? I haven't seen him for 30 years. With his talent and potential, he should be able to cultivate to the middle stage of the aperture opening realm, right? This time, I can lead him to the Celestial Spirit sect and cultivate together with me. This, Miao Dingjin and Miao Changchun's faces changed at the same time. What's going on? Hua Wenxing's heart sank and he said in a low voice, Speak. Immortal Hua, you also know that our Gu God sect. Miao Changchun hesitated for a moment before explaining, but he was quickly interrupted by Hua Wenxing. It's your Gu God sect. I have nothing to do with you. Yes, it's our Gu God sect. Our Gu God sect and Jiuhua Immortal Palace have always been like fire and water. Some time ago, we found out that someone in the Jiuhua Immortal Palace was so talented that she could get one of the 12 spots without participating in the competition. So, we planned to lure her out and kill her first. But, someone came out of nowhere and not only ruined our plan, but even Hua Fifan was killed by him. Miao Changchun carefully looked at Hua Wenxing and said with a nervous expression, What? Hua Wenxing roared and looked at Miao Dingjin coldly. Is this how you take care of Fifan? This time, it's not Sect Master's fault. We didn't expect Ziyue to suddenly attack. As Miao Changchun spoke, he suddenly met Hua Wenxing's cold gaze and shuddered, not daring to speak again. Ziyue? Who is he? Tell me in detail. Otherwise, do you think I won't dare to kill you? Hua Wenxing released his aura and started bargaining. The temperature in the hall suddenly dropped. Even Miao Changchun, who had reached the peak of the aperture awakening realm, felt cold. Chapter 393. In fact, the sect master really cares about martial nephew Hua's safety. He even gave him the divine ability talisman. But that Ziyue just appeared out of nowhere. His strength is not weaker than a divine realm perfected being. Even if martial nephew Hua used the divine ability talisman, he couldn't do anything to him. When we reacted, martial nephew Hua was already dead. Miao Changchun wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and explained. So, he's just an aperture enlightening realm cultivator? Hua Wenxing asked coldly. Yes. Miao Changchun whispered. We suspect that this Ziyue is very likely to be the Kunlun Taoist who rose to fame some time ago. This Kunlun Taoist is said to be the second strongest immortal master under the divine realm in the past 300 years, after Lu Ju Daoist. I wasn't there at the time, but we were indeed careless. Miao Dingjin said with guilt. Comparable to Lu Ju Daoist? Kunlun Taoist? Hua Wenxing naturally knew Lu Ju Daoist, but he had broken through to the divine realm and didn't care about this aperture enlightening realm cultivator. He just said indifferently, no matter what his identity is, as long as he dies, he must die. Your Gu God sect is duty-bound this time. Find him and kill him. Don't worry. Even if you don't say it, he won't be able to live because of this. Miao Dingjin said gloomily. Immortal Master Bai, this is the sect master of our Chaoyang sect, perfected Wanhong. In the living room, the Chaoyang sect's grand elder, Zhuang Xinping, pointed at a middle-aged cultivator in a purple Taoist robe. He looked ordinary, but his aura was ethereal and restrained. Ziyue greets the sect master. Ziyue cupped his fists and said, If it were before, he would be full of awe for divine realm experts like perfected Wanhong. However, as his strength increased, so did his confidence. Although he still didn't lose his respect, he definitely wouldn't be as reverent and fearful as an ordinary cultivator. Should I call you Immortal Master Bai or Kunlun Taoist? Taoist Master Wanhong looked at Ziyue with a complicated gaze. The first time he heard of the title of the Kunlun Taoist was 2 months ago. At that time, he was only shocked by the strength of this mysterious powerhouse. He was able to kill many elders of the Tao Realization sect by himself and destroy the Tao Realization sect, a great immortal method sect. The second time was when the Liujue cave mansion was discovered by others. The method he used to escape from the hands of two deity realm masters had completely established his title as the strongest under the deity realm and invincible in the aperture opening realm. This was the third time. However, he did not expect that the Kunlun Taoist, whose name resounded throughout the entire cultivation world, was actually a disciple of their Chaoyang sect. Moreover, when they learned of the young man's true identity, they also learned that he had killed Hua Fifan, the true disciple of the Gu God sect's sect master. Of course, he was not afraid of the Gu God sect leader. However, Hua Fifan's identity as a disciple of Celestial Spirit sect and the son of Sage Hua gave him a headache. This was clearly a problem. I don't care. Immortal Bai can do it, so can the Kunlun Taoist. Ziwa replied casually. Well, Immortal Bai, I guess you also know that Hua Fifan's father, the talent of the previous generation of the Gu God sect, has returned with the Celestial Spirit sect's worship. Then I want to ask you, what do you think of Elder Zhuang's proposal? Immortal Wanhong nodded and then asked. Give up the competition for the 12 places? Ziwa asked. Yes. Sage Hua is narrow-minded and will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Even if you are a peerless talent, you will definitely occupy one of the 12 places, or even the strongest one among the 12 places. However, he would never allow such a thing to happen. He would definitely kill you. Therefore, I also suggest that you give up this competition and return to the sect as soon as possible, relying on the protection of the array of the Chaoyang sect to escape the pursuit of Sage Hua. If you agree, I can promise you that I will do my best to cultivate you and step into the deity realm as soon as possible. If you are interested, I can even give you the position of sect master in the future. Immortal Wanhong said with a serious face. The growth and prosperity of a sect were indispensable to the growth and prosperity of a sect. In addition to the temptation of the deity elixir, the Celestial Spirit sect did not dare to resist under the deterrence of the deity elixir. It was really a last resort. However, Bai Ziwa was also a person with exceptional talent. Moreover, he had already proven his potential. Now that there was an opportunity, he would naturally try his best to let him stay in the Chaoyang sect to develop and strengthen the sect. Thank you for your kindness, sect master. However, even if I can't successfully obtain one of the 12 places, I can't stay here for too long. If it doesn't work, I will decide to take another path to the outer area. Ziwa shook his head and said, Sure enough, the more talented a genius is, the more ambitious he is. After knowing that there is a wider world, no one is willing to continue to stay in this cage world. Even if it's me, isn't it the same? I'm a bit too hopeful. I only hope that if you succeed in the future, don't forget about the Chaoyang sect. Immortal Wanhong sighed with some loneliness. In the end, Yu Fang gave up and continued to persuade him. Thank you for your understanding, sect master. Of course, please rest assured that as long as I am alive, I will still be a member of the Chaoyang sect. This will never change. Ziwa was not someone who did not know how to repay kindness. If it wasn't for the Chaoyang sect's purple chi divine observation art, he would not have easily stepped into the ranks of immortal cultivation. Even if there were some difficulties in the middle, with the help of the Chaoyang sect's cultivation art and magic art, he solved countless problems and stabilized his growth step by step. It was a great help to his cultivation path. Naturally, he would remember it in his heart. In that case, I will not say anything more. I can only remind you to be careful. Although your strength is strong, compared to a true deity realm expert, you are still inferior. So if you find something wrong, quickly run away. In terms of speed, I have Immortal Lu Ju's movement art, so I don't have to worry about you. In addition, there is one thing I have to say in advance. Once you have a conflict with Hua Wenxing, we will not intervene. Not only to protect ourselves but also because we are not strong enough. Because once we intervene, the other disciples of the Celestial Spirit sect will intervene. At that time, you will be in more danger. Immortal Wanhong changed his tone and said with some guilt. I know. Ziyue nodded, naturally understanding this. The Chaoyang sect only had 2 deity realm experts, Immortal Wanhong and Grand Elder Qin Haohan. Even if they risked their lives, they would not be able to stop the other deity realm experts from the Celestial Spirit sect from intervening. Not intervening and not helping either side was the best choice. Whether it was for the Chaoyang sect or Ziyue, it was the same. The registration for the bone examination went smoothly. The 2 peak enlightening realm cultivators of the Celestial Spirit sect could easily find out whether the bone age of the cultivator was below 50 years old, and what his cultivation talent was like. This mirror actually had the function of the spirit testing platform of the Immortal Cultivation sect. Ziyue stood under the bronze mirror and immediately felt a special spiritual light flashing in his body, which then went back into the mirror. In the mirror, 3 spiritual lights of water, fire, and wood flashed quickly. After the 3 spiritual lights flashed, a layer of light cyan light flashed. The 3 spiritual lights of water, fire, and wood indicated that he had 3 spiritual root. The light cyan light indicated that his bone age was below 25 years old. In addition to the light cyan, there were dark cyan, light red, and dark red, which respectively meant that he was below 50 years old, below 75 years old, and below 100 years old. As long as there was a red light, it naturally meant that he was not qualified to participate in the competition for the 12 places. Although the person recording the results was a little surprised by Ziyue's bone age, his talent of 3 spiritual roots obviously did not attract their attention. Therefore, he did not say much and just handed Ziyue a participation token according to the rules. Ziyue thanked him and reached out to take it. Sect Master, Perfected Hua, we found Ziyue. He actually dared to register to participate in the competition for the 12 spots this time. Just as Ziyue was about to register, a Gu God sect cultivator quickly returned to a hall and respectfully said to Miao Dingjin and Hua Wensheng, I thought he had already escaped. I didn't expect him to be so bold and reckless. Let's go, lead the way, we will take his life today. Miao Dingjin was shocked and suddenly stood up. Because of Hua Fifan, staying beside Hua Wensheng was simply torture. Especially now that the Gu God sect did not have a disciple with potential to participate in the competition for the 12 places, his heart was gloomy. At this time, when he heard this, his killing intent soared to the sky, and he was a little impatient. Don't worry. Since he's registered to participate in the competition, then it's perfect. I'll kill him in front of everyone on the arena, where my son died. I'll burn his bones and scatter his ashes, refine his soul, and light a lamp to comfort my son's soul in heaven. Hua Wensheng sneered and said coldly, Well, let him live for a few more hours. Miao Dingjin's heart turned cold and he quickly nodded. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, a huge golden light suddenly soared into the sky from afar. Following the flicker of the golden light, a series of loud noises that sounded like giant bells and drums could be heard. A cultivator with a heavenly spiritual root, born with a Taoist body. Sure enough, someone with such peerless talent has appeared. Who is it? Is it the disciple of Jiuhua Immortal Palace you mentioned before, Fan Qingyu? Hua Wensheng suddenly stood up and asked in shock. It should be her. Apart from her, there is no other person with such talent. Miao Dingjin nodded with an unsightly expression. However, before he could finish his words, a dazzling green light flashed by. Then, a loud buzzing sound that sounded like a large bell and drum resounded throughout the entire ancient Desolation City. Miao Dingjin's expression suddenly became extremely interesting, and he seemed to be a little dumbfounded. The second person with such peerless talent? Hua Wensheng's expression changed again, and without any hesitation, he immediately rushed to the arena to sign up. Miao Dingjin's heart was bitter. After hesitating for a moment, he flew up and chased after him. Chapter 394. After signing up, Ziyue immediately turned around, intending to leave and continue to practice the divine light of obliteration. When he was chatting with the sect master, Immortal Wan Tao, he naturally asked him about the confusion he encountered when he was practicing the divine light of obliteration. In any case, Immortal Wan Tao was also a God Realm expert who had started practicing the divine light of obliteration early. He had been immersed in this divine sense for a long time and had rich experience in cultivation. Although he had the property panel before he started, he was no different from other practitioners. He needed to cultivate step by step. The harvest was great. Not only were many of his doubts easily resolved, but he also understood the direction of cultivation of this divine ability. In addition, the other party had specially explained the cultivation experience, the structure analysis, and the transformation of the divine ability. In just a short period of time, the progress of his cultivation of this divine ability had soared again. Now, he had already reached the level of 97% uninitiated. Therefore, he naturally had to strike while the iron was hot and cultivate it. After all, there were still a few hours before the competition for the 12 places officially began. However, at this moment, he saw Zhao Yuer, who was led by Zhu Shuizhen, coming over. Accompanying him were Zhong Yun, Tang Xianren, and the others. Obviously, with the arrival of the people from the Celestial Spirit sect, the registration for the battle for the 12 places began. Zhu Shuizhen finally came out of the sealed place with Zhao Yuer. "Brother Bai." Seeing Ziyue, Zhao Yuer's eyes lit up and quickly walked up. "Immortal Bai." "Greetings, Immortal Bai." Zhu Shuizhen and others also hurriedly greeted him. "You're here to sign up, right? Go ahead," Ziyue said with a smile. "Yes, I risked my life to come to this ancient, desolate city for this moment. I don't want to continue to be on tenterhooks, so I quickly brought her out." Zhu Shuizhen bowed slightly and said, "Brother Bai, you will go out with me, right?" Zhao Yue looked up, nervously holding Ziyue's hand, and asked, "Don't worry, I will definitely go to the outer area. I will also go to the firmament territory where the Celestial Spirit sect is located." Ziyue did not answer directly, but just smiled and said, "I'll wait for you then." Zhao Yuer did not understand the meaning behind Ziyue's words. She only thought that Brother Bai would also go with them. A joyful smile bloomed on her little face, and only then did she follow Zhu Shuizhen step by step, looking back as she walked towards the 2 Heavenly Spirit sect cultivators. What a coincidence! Ziyue raised his eyebrows and looked at the people from the 9 Radiance Celestial Palace in surprise. Fan Qingyu was also among them. Perhaps it was because of the previous ambush, but the Jiuhua Immortal Palace's protection of Fan Qingyu had increased significantly. Other than a few cultivators at the peak of the aperture enlightening realm protecting her, even the deity realm spiritual master, Fengxia spiritual master, walked by her side. Her eyes were as cold as lightning, and she looked like a person who didn't want to get close to her. "Immortal Master Bai, you're here too." Fan Qingyu's face lit up, and she quickly walked over to greet him. "That's right." Ziyue nodded and looked at Reverend Fengxiao. "Greetings, Reverend Fengxiao and all the fairies." "Yes." Daoist Danxia nodded and didn't pay much attention to them. Instead, she reminded Fan Qingyu, "Qingyu, let's go. Don't waste time." "Immortal Master Bai, I heard that Sage Hua has returned and has broken through to the deity realm. You must be careful. If you really can't do it, you should give up. If you can, wait for me for 30 years. Next time, no matter the price, I'll definitely bring you out." Fan Qingyu ignored Daoist Danxia and said with a determined expression, "Thank you for your kind intentions. However, 30 years is too long. I have to seize every moment. Even if it doesn't work here, I'll find a way out. Don't worry about me." Ziyue shook his head and said with bright eyes, "As expected. I knew that with your ambition, you wouldn't choose to be trapped here." This is a map I obtained from the Palace Master of the Nine Radiants Celestial Palace. It contains information about the dangerous places that the disciples of the Nine Radiants Celestial Palace used to venture into the outer realm. Perhaps it will be of help to you. I've looked for you several times before, but you weren't there. I thought you might appear today. Fan Qingyu looked at Ziyue seriously. In the end, she sighed and handed a jade scroll to Ziyue. Qingyu, why aren't you leaving? Reverend Fengxia urged again. Thank you, Master Fan. Ziyue saw the persistence and stubbornness in Fan Qingyu's eyes and knew that this was her way of making up for it. He nodded and reached out to take it. I'll wait for you at the Celestial Spirit Sect. Fan Qingyu looked at him deeply before following Reverend Fengxia and the others to the two-peak Enlightening Realm cultivators of the Emerald Cloud Sect. At this moment, Zhao Yu'er stood in front of the two Celestial Spirit Sect disciples. The bronze mirror in their hands lit up slightly and a ray of light shone down. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, a huge mass of golden light soared into the sky. Metal attribute Celestial Spiritual Root. Natural Taoist aptitude. The two shouted in surprise and hurriedly looked at Zhao Yu'er with fiery eyes. Zhao Yu'er shrank back in fear. The two's attitude suddenly became gentle and they smiled. Don't be afraid. Then, they quickly took out a message talisman and sent the news of the appearance of a peerless genius to Reverend Jinheng, who was in charge of the disciple selection. Two immortal masters, please test my Qingyu as well. Her talent shouldn't be worse than this little girl's. Reverend Fengxia stepped forward and said with a smile. Is that so? The two were a little unhappy when they saw Reverend Fengxia coming to disturb them. But when they heard this, they were shocked and immediately agreed. The light from the bronze mirror quickly fell on Fan Qingyu's body. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Almost instantaneously, a loud rumbling sound similar to the one before rang out. But unlike Zhao Yu'er, the light from the mirror was deep blue. A water attribute Celestial Spiritual Root is also a natural Taoist aptitude. This time, the heavens are really blessing our Celestial Spirit Sect. The two were ecstatic and their breathing became rapid. They looked at Fan Qingyu and Zhao Yu'er as if they were looking at a peerless treasure. It should be known that the Celestial Spirit Sect came to the ancient barren region to conduct the disciple selection once every 30 years. It was a matter that even the primordial soul realm patriarchs attached great importance to. Once such a peerless genius appeared, they would definitely be given a huge reward. The reward for discovering two peerless geniuses was definitely very generous. Naturally, it also made them excited and surprised. The appearance of two peerless geniuses quickly shocked countless people. Not only the God Realm experts of the major sects, but also the cultivators of the Celestial Spirit Sect all quickly arrived. Fan Qingyu of the Jiuhua Immortal Palace. Her talent is indeed peerless. No wonder the Gu God sect schemed to kill her in advance. However, the other peerless genius was really surprising. Zhao Yu'er of the Chaoyang sect? No one expected that such a peerless genius was hidden in the Chaoyang sect. Indeed, there was no news at all before. However, this was normal as well. Any disciple with such natural talent would carefully conceal themselves as they were deeply afraid of being discovered and killed in advance. Even Fan Qingyu of the Jiuhua Immortal Palace, if the Gu God sect didn't suddenly attack her and reveal her identity, who could really confirm her talent? Usually, it's already a shocking thing to have a peerless genius. I didn't expect that two of them came directly this time. However, in the case that they each occupy a place, there are only 10 places left. The competition is more fierce than usual. I just saw that Ziyue also signed up to participate in this competition. Is it too difficult for me? In the midst of the discussion, everyone looked at the two peerless geniuses who were surrounded by many God Realm experts with extremely complicated eyes. Some people who were also going to participate in the competition of the 12 places were extremely depressed. The 12 places were already scarce. Now that 2 of them were taken up, the hope of the remaining people was even slimmer. The fact that Ziyue was also going to participate in the competition made them even more desperate. In the previous battle, Ziyue's strength was too strong. It was beyond the limit of the young generation, and no one was sure that they could take one of the places from him. Of course, some people also knew that Hua Fifan, who was killed by Ziyue, was the son of Hua Wenxing, a god realm expert of the Heavenly Spirit sect. It could be said that the 2 sides were irreconcilable, and there must be a result. Whether he could get a place or not depended on Hua Wenxing. 7-star legendary sword Immortal Jin Heng, Zhong Tianling Tianqi, the palace master of the Zhihua Immortal Palace, Immortal Fengxia, Immortal Mengchuan, the sect master of the Beixian sect. Ziyue silently looked at the god realm experts who appeared one after another, and calmly sensed the strength of their auras. Even if he didn't use the great insight skill to explore, he could find a lot of information just by sensing their auras, and perceive the strength of their realms. Among them, the strongest was Immortal Jinheng, who was at the peak of the middle stage god realm, and then Immortal Susan, who was at the middle stage god realm. However, to his surprise, although Immortal Yushu, the palace master of the Zhihua Immortal Palace, was weaker than Immortal Susan, who was also at the middle stage god realm. Then there was Immortal Tianqi, the divine Mandarin Duck Saber. Although he was also in the early stage of the divine realm, the fierceness of his aura seemed to be stronger than that of Immortal Wan Tao, the sect master of the Chaoyang sect, who was also in the early stage of the divine realm but whose real battle strength had reached the first class of the early stage of the divine realm. So, in fact, there is a stronger level above the early stage god realm? Ziyue thought to himself, and found it difficult to judge. After all, even if they were at the same level, if they didn't really fight, it was difficult for others to judge the strength of their opponent. Suddenly, Ziyue narrowed his eyes and saw a group of people coming from afar. Among them, he saw Miao Changchun, the Grand Elder of the Gu God sect, who he had met once. Chapter 395. In addition to Miao Changchun, the 2 divine realm experts with powerful auras also attracted his attention. Miao Dingjin, the sect leader of the Gu God sect? Hua Wenxing, a disciple of the Celestial Spirit sect? Almost immediately, Bai Ziyue guessed the identities of these 2 people. His heart trembled and he tensed up slightly. At the same time that Bai Ziyue saw them, Miao Changchun's eyes swept over them, and his pupils constricted. He also saw Bai Ziyue. Sect leader, Immortal Hua, that man is Ziyue. Miao Changchun was slightly surprised and shouted quickly. Ziyue! Kill an extraordinary person? Miao Dingjin and Hua Wenxing looked at Ziyue, following Miao Changchun's direction. Ziyue die. The moment he saw Bai Ziyue, the originally calm Hua Wenxing's eyes turned red, and a ferocious look appeared on his face. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes turn red. At this moment, he had already forgotten about his suggestion to kill Bai Ziyue in the arena. His aura instantly soared, and a black divine saber slashed down rapidly like a bolt from the blue. Sure enough, Ziyue was shocked. The power of the heavenly cycle in his body flowed quickly. His body moved, and in an instant, he moved more than 100 meters away. Rumble! In the earth-shattering sound, the earth shook. If it weren't for the protection of the array, it would have collapsed in an instant. However, under the powerful attack, more than 10 cultivators around Ziyue were quickly affected. 7 or 8 cultivators were killed on the spot, and the rest were seriously injured. At this moment, the power of a divine realm expert's attack was undoubtedly displayed. Oh no, run! The surrounding cultivators quickly fled into the distance. Die! The sect leader of the Gu God sect looked gloomy. A long spear was shot out like a flash of silver light. Miao Changchun and several other people of the Gu God sect immediately stepped forward and launched their own attacks. Such a huge commotion naturally attracted countless cultivators, including a group of deity realm experts. When immortal Jin Hing saw Hua Wenxing's ferocious face, he couldn't help but ask in confusion, "What's going on? Isn't junior brother Wenxing a reckless person?" It is said that before junior brother Wenxing joined the Celestial Spirit sect, he had a son here who was killed some time ago. He must be looking for that kid to avenge him. This person is stupid to dare to appear in the ancient Desolation City. Taoist Master Tianqi smiled and explained with a calm tone. "I see." Venerable Jin Heng nodded indifferently and looked at the battlefield with interest. He had no intention of stopping the fight. Venerable Fengxia spiritual master stood among them. Although she was grateful to Bai Ziyue for saving Fan Qingyu, she had already expected this outcome. She did not want to cause a misunderstanding with the Celestial Spirit sect, so she did not want to intervene. This was also the reason why he had deliberately treated Bai Ziyue coldly. Immortal Wanhong's heart tightened, and he couldn't help but hesitate. In his view, Ziyue's talent might not be as good as Fan Qingyu and Zhao Yuer, but he was definitely a person with great luck. Now that he was the strongest under the Divine Realm and invincible in the Aperture Opening Realm, his future potential was bound to be limitless. Therefore, he wanted to protect Ziyue and build a supreme foundation for the Chaoyang sect in the next 100 years. However, when he felt a cold gaze coming from the eyes of Reverend Su San, a middle-stage God realm cultivator of the Celestial Spirit sect, he was shocked. He immediately calmed down and did not dare to move. The other Divine Realm experts just looked on coldly. They were very happy to see a cultivator with great potential fall from the Chaoyang sect. Rumble. Sure enough, the idea of using the Celestial Spirit sect to take a warship to the outer domain won't work. Ziyue glanced at the group of Celestial Spirit sect cultivators and sighed in his heart, but he calmed down on the surface. "I thought wrong. I shouldn't have been so lucky. It's fine now." He narrowed his eyes, lifted his foot, and took a step forward. Swoosh. He quickly disappeared on the spot. Divine sense, distance shrinking. When he reappeared, Ziyue was already above Miao Changchun and the other disciples of the Gu God sect. Without any hesitation, he raised his hand and slapped out fiercely. In an instant, a huge and clear palm print spread out continuously, almost covering the entire void, as if covering the sky and the sun, and fiercely smashed down. This is the face of immortal Meng Chuan, the sect leader of the Beixian sect, changed greatly. He had a deep impression of the familiar wave of the palm. He suddenly realized that Bai Ziyue was most likely the Kunlun Taoist who had snatched the God-striking ruler Dharma treasure and the divine skill inheritance from him in the 6 ultimate cave dwelling. Oh no! The sect leader of the Gu God sect, Miao Dingjin, and Hua Wenxing, the 2 divine realm experts, were shocked at the same time. Even though the palm didn't hit them, they could clearly feel the horror of the palm. It was not inferior to the full-force attack of an early-stage Divine Realm expert. Almost at the same time, they stretched out their hands and slashed out 2 dazzling and cold sword rays that were filled with the aura of Gengjin. They turned into 2 golden ribbons and slashed down fiercely at Ziyue. Divine Sense, Gengjin's single chi sword. There were 2 of them. When the 2 golden Gung single aura swords slashed down, they were extremely fast and incomparably sharp. They contained an endless amount of sharpness, and even space itself seemed to be sliced apart, forming 2 pitch-black ripples. Ziyue pressed down with his hand and the great immortal martial palm slammed down fiercely. It was like a huge mountain crushing down, causing the air to explode. Then, without looking at it, he lifted his foot and shot out like a bolt of lightning, covering 1,000 feet in one step. No, how could he be so strong? Miao Changchun and the others shouted. Suddenly, they realized that the power of Ziyue's palm was much stronger than it was a few days ago. They wanted to dodge, but they felt that as the palm fell, heaven and earth were crushed and the void was frozen. They hurriedly used all kinds of defensive means. However, the power of Ziue's great immortal martial palm was now so strong that it was comparable to the full-force attack of an early-stage divine realm cultivator. How could they, who were at the peak of the aperture in lightning realm, block it? When the palm fell, it was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. No matter what kind of defense or attack they used, they were all shattered the moment they faced the palm. Then, the remaining force of the palm fell on their bodies. Puff! They were all smashed into blood foam. Even the storage bags on their bodies couldn't withstand the terrifying power and burst open. Endless light shot out in all directions. Chi! Chi! At the same time, two Gengjin single chi swords slashed down and slashed on the ground, causing a deafening sound. However, he had already missed. How could it be? It's so fast. Miao Dingjin and Hua Wenxing were shocked. Junior brother Hua, do you need help? At this moment, Reverend Su San asked curiously. Oh no, it's time to leave. Ziue was shocked. He glanced at Su San and the other divine realm experts coldly. He knew that there were many experts in the ancient Desolation City. If they attacked him together, he would be defeated even if he had the extreme speed of shrinking. He hurriedly lifted his foot and took a step forward. Swoosh! He quickly ran out of the city. We can't let him get away! Miao Dingjin roared. His heart was bleeding. Ziue's palm not only killed the first, third, and fifth elders of the Gu God sect, but it also killed several young cultivators of the Gu God sect. The Gu God sect suffered heavy losses and their strength was greatly reduced. Stop him for me! Hua Wenxing chased after him and slashed with his black divine saber again. Taoist Master Su San also soared into the sky at the first moment. With a clang, a wave of spirit chi light quickly dispersed. Rumble! It was as if a layer of shackles had been added to the vast and mighty void, causing it to abruptly sink. Ziue's speed suddenly decreased. However, shrinking was a divine power after all. When it was completed, his speed was extremely fast and he quickly rushed out of the range of his opponent's attack. Kill! However, a few more deity realm experts dashed out immediately after that. These people included the two early divine realm cultivators from the Heavenly Spirit sect, the Nanman Kingdom's Imperial Preceptor, Reverend Tu Tian and Reverend Yuan Hao, whom Bai Ziue had met once before. The moment Bai Ziue displayed the immortal martial handprint, not only did immortal Meng Chuan, the faction leader of Bei Xian faction, recognize the fact that he was the Kunlun Taoist, but immortal Yuan, who was also at the early stage of the God realm, also recognized him. The trip to the Six Extremes cave was a humiliation for him. Not only were the magical treasures taken away by Reverend Meng Chuan, but he was also treated as a backdrop, which made the Kunlun Taoist famous. In addition, most of the benefits were taken away by the Kunlun Taoist. Thus, his hatred for the Kunlun Taoist could be said to be overflowing. At this very moment, he was unable to contain himself and directly charged out. Die! Reverend Yuan roared, his eyes cold and full of killing intent. Because of his position, he happened to be right in front of Bai Ziue. Therefore, when he attacked with his flying sword, he immediately rushed in front of Bai Ziue. At this moment, he wanted to avenge his previous humiliation. In fact, Reverend Meng Chuan of the Bei Xian faction also wanted to attack, but he was stopped by Wan Hong of the Chaoyang sect. Reverend Yu Shu of the Jiuhua Immortal Palace moved her chi and helped to stop the two experts who were ready to attack. Brother Bai! Master, please help Brother Bai! Zhao Yuer looked at the battlefield in horror. She hurriedly held Zhu Shuaizhen's hand and sobbed. I can't help him. Zhu Shuaizhen's heart was heavy. She shook her head with a complicated expression and said, At this moment, no one can save him. He can only rely on himself. He's your brother? At this moment, a voice sounded beside her. Zhao Yue widened her teary eyes. Seeing that it was a beautiful big sister, she just nodded but did not reply. Her little face was still full of worry. Then, I'll take care of you from now on. Fan Qingyu patted her head and said in a gentle tone. Chapter 396. Then, she quickly looked at the person in charge of the Celestial Spirit Sect, Immortal Jin Heng, and said quickly, Senior, Bai Ziyue's talent is unparalleled. He is not weaker than us. Do you really want to kill him? His talent was tested before. He was a cultivator with 3 spiritual roots under the age of 25. Looking at his strength now, his potential is not weak. Out of goodwill, the cultivator at the peak of the aperture in Lightning Realm nodded and said, It's not bad for a cultivator with 3 spiritual roots under the age of 25 to reach the realm of immortal cultivation. However, Hua Wenxing is my junior brother. Even if I don't help him, I won't interfere in their feud. As for the other brothers, I don't care. Also, I have to remind you that you and he are destined to be in 2 different worlds. Don't get into unnecessary trouble. In the end, you will be a member of the Celestial Spirit Sect. Immortal Jin Heng's voice was calm, but the meaning behind his words was very obvious. Fan Qingyu felt a chill in her heart. She knew that even if she was a peerless genius, she still hadn't matured, so she wouldn't be valued at all. She had no choice but to cast her worried gaze back to the battlefield. However, she just happened to hear a thunderous roar. How dare you! Immortal Jin Heng, who was still calm, rushed into the battlefield as fast as lightning. Die! Immortal Yuan stretched out his hand and the flying sword turned into a ray of light and shot out. You're courting death. Ziyue's eyes were cold. He stepped out and not only dodged Immortal Yuan's flying sword, but also came within 10 feet of him. Then, a black ruler suddenly flashed and struck out. It was a middle-grade magic treasure, the God-beating ruler. Oh no! Immortal Yuan's heart skipped a beat and he quickly summoned a round shield. However, it was useless. The God-beating ruler was a magic treasure that specialized in attacking a cultivator's divine sense, divine will, and even the soul. Although the round shield had strong defensive power and could be called a rare treasure, it did not have the means to defend against soul attack. Clang! The God-beating ruler flashed and fell on the round shield. The black light quickly penetrated the round shield. Although it was slightly consumed, most of its power still fell on Immortal Yuan's body. Daoist Yuan's mind was in severe pain. Not only did his eyes lose focus, he lost the ability to fight back. Even the spiritual light on his body quickly dissipated. Following this, a flying sword streaked across the sky and landed on his head. With a puff, it pierced through his head. Soul Energy Plus 548,262. The early Divine Realm expert, Reverend Yuan, had fallen. At this moment, it could be said to be earth-shattering. Everyone was stunned. A Divine Realm expert was dead? Killed by Ziyue. Even though everyone was shocked by his speed and strength, there was no doubt that he was in the aperture enlightening state. Being able to kill a God Realm Master with the strength of an aperture enlightening Realm Master, going against the odds to slay immortals? Everyone's mind was shaken, and they were speechless. That Dharma treasure seems to be the divine striking ruler? Isn't his speed a little too fast? So many deity realm experts couldn't catch up with him? Could it be a movement divine ability? Kunlun Taoist, he is Kunlun Taoist. Ziyue is Kunlun Taoist. That's right, that's right. Everything makes sense now. Only the Kunlun Taoist could possibly have such means. When he was in the 6th Ultimate Cave Mansion, he was the strongest under the Divine Realm, invincible in the Aperture Enlightening Realm. After the trip to the 6 Ultimate Caves, he obtained the God Striking Ruler and the Ground Shrinking Technique, so his strength must have increased greatly. It's normal for him to be able to kill the Deity Realm experts and kill the Deity Realm experts, right? Is it really normal? Maybe? All of this is really too shocking. Unbelievable, everyone was in an uproar. They looked at each other in dismay. Some were enlightened, and some were in disbelief. This battle had truly astonished them too much. It started suddenly, and the process was beyond their expectation. Moreover, they found that Ziyue didn't seem to have suffered a loss. In the Gu God sect, except for the sect leader, Miao Dingjin, all of them had fallen. Reverend Yuan, who tried to stop him, was also killed by him in one move. However, this is as far as he can go. Reverend Su San, who was at the intermediate divine realm of the Celestial Spirit sect, plus Miao Dingjin, Hua Wenxing, and 5 other deity realm experts of the Gu God sect. No matter how strong Ziyue is, he can't resist them. Indeed, although he's strong, he's only one person, and his realm is only at the peak of the aperture enlightening realm. Even if he can kill 1 or 2 deity realm experts, he can't escape from the siege of other experts. It's a pity that the genius of a generation is going to fall here. It can't be helped. He dared to provoke the Celestial Spirit sect. The Celestial Spirit sect is a colossus. None of the 7 major sects in the ancient desolate domain dared to defy them. Then, they discussed and shook their heads. Ziyue's strength was indeed powerful. He could kill a deity realm expert at the aperture enlightening realm, and he could kill a deity realm expert. However, he had to stop here. Perhaps he would become a legendary figure that countless people talked about, and even be introduced into the secular world. Some scholars and poets would write poems and lyrics as a memorial. But in the end, he was going to die. After killing Reverend Yuan, Ziyue didn't have time to pick up his storage bag because the next attack was coming. An early-stage deity realm expert of the Celestial Spirit sect seemed to have mastered a divine sense like Ziyue. His speed was even faster than Su San, who was at the middle-stage deity realm. He quickly rushed to Ziyue. Then, with a slight point, a long rope quickly swept out and tied up Ziyue. Treasure-stabilizing divine light. Ziyue's mind moved, and the treasure-stabilizing divine light quickly rushed out and fell on the long rope. It paused for a moment and froze in the void. Then, he stretched out his hand and a huge palm print, which covered the sky and the sun, quickly condensed and dispersed in the void. A ball of spiritual light, like a flash of lightning, rushed to the sky-covering palm print. Chi, chi, chi. In an instant they merged and shook with each other. Immortal martial handprint. Annihilation divine light. At this moment, it was by Ziyue who executed the immortal martial grand palm and the annihilation divine ray to rapidly merge these 2 offensive skills. Amidst a series of buzzing sounds, the 2 spells collided, repelled, coexisted, fused, and other stepped. They quickly condensed and quickly formed a palm print that was much smaller but had an additional ball of golden light. Immortal martial annihilation palm. Rumble. Ziyue didn't hesitate to slap down. It was like a golden cloud falling down. The long rope, which had just rushed out of the treasure-stabilizing divine light, was quickly broken. The remaining power of the palm print didn't diminish, and it fiercely hit the deity realm expert of the Celestial Spirit sect. Puff! In an instant, the deity realm expert was smashed into a pile of meat. He was dead. The scene was silent. Soon, a series of hissing sounds of cold air being sucked in could be heard. If it was said that Bai Ziyue had killed Immortal Yuan with the help of the magic treasure of the God-beating ruler, then at this moment, he had killed another expert of the God realm, which really shocked countless people. Those who had judged that he would soon be defeated were all dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. The weakest deity realm expert of the Celestial Spirit sect had mastered a divine sense, but he was definitely more powerful than Immortal Yuan. Spiritual Energy plus 571652. After killing a cultivator of the Celestial Spirit sect with one palm, Ziyue still looked very calm. In his eyes, there was no one in the world who couldn't be killed. Since he had decided to kill him, no matter who he was, he wouldn't show any mercy. He lifted his foot and took a step forward. Swish! Once again, he flew out of the city. How dare you! Just at this moment, Venerable Jin Heng, who had been calm all this time, suddenly let out an earth-shattering roar. His eyes were wide open, like a peerless ferocious beast that had suddenly opened its eyes. Clang! 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 A strong and ferocious aura suddenly burst out, and under the crushing force, there was a series of tremors. Then, he crushed his body, and turned into a golden shield light, quickly chasing in the direction of Ziyue. He didn't expect that in this small ancient desolation region, there would be someone who dared to kill a disciple of the Celestial Spirit sect in front of him. Ziyue didn't answer. After one step, another step. In just a few steps, he had crossed a long street and quickly rushed out of the city from the city gate. In an instant, a carefree feeling like a bird flying freely in the sky was born in his heart. After all, there was a fifth-grade formation in the ancient desolation city. Because there was no one controlling it, it wouldn't be triggered at all unless he deliberately attacked some important places. However, within the Great Formation, not only was there a flight restriction, every single building was also protected by the formation. Thus, with his earth-shrinking technique, the distance he could cover with each step was not limited at all. Naturally, his speed was affected to a certain extent. Moreover, when he attacked, he actually had some scruples in his heart. Under the cover of the formation, who knew where he would be hit by the formation's backlash? A fifth-grade formation had countless formation bases. Perhaps an open space, a stone pillar, a brick was where the formation base was. He had to be careful even when facing the backlash of a third-grade formation, let alone a fifth-grade formation. However, outside the city, it was immediately different. Not only could his speed burst out completely, but even his combat strength could also be increased correspondingly. Not to mention, outside the city, the early Divine Realm Great Demon he had subdued, the White Tiger Great Demon, could also be put to good use. Feeling relieved, Ziyue, who rushed out of the ancient desolation city, slowed down a little. Killing a few unimportant people was not enough to relieve the gloom in his heart, nor was it enough to vent the killing intent in his heart. Whether it was Yuan Zhenren or the early Divine Realm experts of the Celestial Spirit sect, they were killed because they rushed to him. His real target was Miao Dingzhen, the sect master of the Gu God sect, and Hua Wenxing, the disciple of the Celestial Spirit sect. Since their hatred for him was so deep, he naturally had to solve this problem and kill them one by one. Chapter 397. You Can't Escape. Su San, Miao Dingzhen, and Hua Wenxing rushed out of the ancient desolation city at full speed. They turned into 3 rays of light and chased after Su Mo Ziyue was running at the speed of an early Divine Realm cultivator. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, Reverend Su San, whose strength had reached the middle stage of the Divine Realm, was the fastest. Soon, he was less than 1,000 feet away from Shirmu. With a flicker of his mind, he took out a jade bottle. The jade bottle swayed slightly and emitted beams of mysterious light that were as bright as the sun. The rays of light were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they were already in front of Ziyue. I hit him. Hua Wenxing was overjoyed. He knew that although Senior Su San's jade bottle was only a lower-grade magical treasure, the rays that were stored in it were not simple. It was the profound pure tricolored light that was comparable to a divine ability. The tricolored light was all-pervasive. Any defensive technique would not be able to block it. Even a middle Divine Realm cultivator would be severely injured if they were hit by it. Ziyue was only at the peak of the awakening realm. Once he was hit by it, he might even die. He missed. Perfected Su San's face changed. The tricolored light quickly passed through Ziyue's body. However, it was just an illusion. The real person had already disappeared. Where is he? Perfected Su-san was surprised. Suddenly, he saw a golden book soaring into the sky. Then, 12 beams of spiritual light appeared and rushed into the void, forming thunderclouds. The void twisted, and layers of thunderclouds gathered to form a formation, which was quickly activated. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts descended from the sky in a mighty manner. Boom, boom, boom. Almost every corner of Sumo's body was covered by the lightning bolts. At this moment, Zyue made his move. The 12 rays of the divine firmament 5 lightning art sealed in the heavenly expansion mirror were quickly destroyed. Then, he quickly turned around, taking a step forward and arriving in front of Miao Dingjin and Hua Wenxing. "You're courting death." The two of them were shocked at first. Then they were furious. Clang! Clang! 2 streaks of Gung Metal 1 energy sword ability were swiftly tossed out. Zyue's expression did not change. With a thought, a golden pagoda rushed out. Sizzle, the top of the pagoda shone brightly. Then, a huge white tiger rushed out. Roar! White tiger roared and turned into a streak of white light, rushing toward the Gu God sect leader, Miao Dingjin. On the other hand, Zyue took a step forward. Using the earth shrinking technique, he dodged 2 more Gungjin single chi sword. A black ruler expanded in the wind and quickly struck out. Hua Wenxing's expression changed. Having seen Yu Wenjinren's miserable state, he naturally knew how powerful this magic treasure was. He quickly retreated and took out a long black saber. The long saber expanded in the wind and slashed toward the sky, colliding fiercely with the god's striking ruler. With a flash of black light, the ruler pierced through the saber and headed straight for Wenxing. Boom! Immediately after, the 2 magic treasures collided. After a slight pause, they both flew back. Hua Wenxing's expression changed. He quickly took out a huge golden cauldron. The golden cauldron was activated by him. It expanded rapidly and turned into a huge lid. Balls of orange chi of Mother Earth fell down and enveloped him. Chi, the black light, quickly rushed to the golden cauldron. After expending almost half of its power, it landed on Hua Wenxing's head. Humph! Hua Wenxing groaned. His mind was in pain. His expression was hideous, and he was absent-minded for a moment. Bai Zyue naturally wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. With a move of his divine sense, the evasive divine sword shot out violently, and it transformed into a sword capable of destroying all techniques as it fiercely stabbed forward. Clang! The golden cauldron trembled and let out a loud sound. However, it blocked Zyue's law-evading divine sword. Zyue's expression did not change. He fiercely struck out with his palm. Immortal Martial Grand Palm. A ball of spiritual light filled with the aura of destruction and nirvanic extermination condensed, enveloping the great immortal martial palm. The two of them fused together, transforming into the great immortal martial palm of extermination. Boom! It fiercely slammed down on the golden cauldron. Buzz! The spiritual light on the golden cauldron quickly dimmed. The chi of Mother Earth that was falling down also shook. However, it was blocked once again. What a powerful defensive treasure! Zyue's expression changed. He did not care about the consumption of energy. Immortal Martial Grand Palm, Annihilation Divine Light, God Striking Ruler, Law Evading Divine Sword. All kinds of attacks were madly thrown out. He was very clear about his strengths and weaknesses. Under the earth shrinking technique, his speed was peerless. He could move unhindered in the battlefield. However, in terms of attack, the law-evading divine sword was only equivalent to the 3rd grade of the divine realm. As for the annihilation divine light, it was barely equivalent to the 3rd grade of the early divine realm. The immortal martial grand palm was equivalent to the 2nd grade of the early divine realm. Although the power of the immortal martial grand palm was increased, it was only equivalent to the 1st grade of the early divine realm. As for the God Striking Ruler, It was used to attack the divine sense and divine will. It was extremely useful in the battlefield. However, Huo Wenxing's golden cauldron was extremely powerful. It even had the ability to defend against divine soul attack. This greatly reduced the effect of the god striking ruler. So, if I don't have enough attack power, I will make up for it with numbers. With enough soul energy, my yuan force is limitless. I don't believe that I can't kill Huo Wenxing. Ziyue was calm. He did not care about the consumption of his yuan force. He threw out spells, divine abilities, and attacks one after another. Every time Huo Wenxing was about to wake up, the god-striking ruler would hit him at the right time and knock him out again. However, at this time, immortal Jin Heng had already turned into a golden light. In a flash, he rushed out from the ancient desolation city. Following closely behind were the other deity realm experts and countless cultivators with different strength. Stop! Immortal Jin Heng saw that Huo Wenxing was at a disadvantage. His face changed and he shouted angrily. A golden divine sword that looked like specks of starlight instantly flew out and slashed toward Bai Ziyue. Taoist Master Su San also rushed out of the endless thunderclouds at this time. Then, he gently lifted the jade bottle, and the tricolored light of Xian Qing shot out again. Just a little bit more, Ziyue sighed inwardly. He only had time to throw out a ray of divine obliteration light. Then, he lifted his foot and took a step forward. Swoosh! He quickly reappeared 1,000 zhang away, dodging the joint attack of the two mid-divine realm experts. At the same time, Ziyue's divine obliteration light shot out and hit the golden cauldron on Huo Wenxing's body. Dong! A loud sound was heard. The golden cauldron, which was already on the verge of collapse and had dimmed to the extreme, suddenly collapsed. The golden cauldron was sent flying by the huge force. The divine obliteration light dimmed, but it did not lose its momentum. It flashed and scratched Huo Wenxing's body fiercely. Chi Huo Wenxing, who was still in a daze, had his divine robe destroyed. Half of his body was destroyed by the divine obliteration light, revealing his bloody flesh. Under the intense pain, Huo Wenxing immediately woke up and screamed. At this moment, half of his body was destroyed. He suffered an unprecedented injury and almost fainted from the pain. There seems to be something wrong with the power of this divine obliteration light. Bai Ziyue naturally had a clear judgment of the power of the divine ability that he was using. This attack was obviously stronger than the divine obliteration light that he had used in the past. He quickly turned his gaze and looked at his status panel. Divine obliteration light, beginner level? Ziyue was slightly stunned. He did not expect that he had unknowingly cultivated this divine ability to the beginner level. But then again, it was normal. Previously, he had already cultivated this divine power to 97% of the uninitiated level. After receiving guidance from the sect leader of the Chaoyang sect, Wan Hong, his progress was already fast, and coupled with the fierce battle this time, his progress was already very fast. During the battle, he calmed his mind and continuously used the divine obliteration light to verify Wan Hong's cultivation experience. Naturally, his progress was fast. That was why he had suddenly reached the beginner level. Then, endless joy immediately flashed in his heart. There was only one thing that made him feel helpless in this battle. That was, his attack power was insufficient. Otherwise, with his means, he would have blown away Huo Wenxing's defensive golden cauldron and quickly killed him. He would not have been entangled for such a long time. Now that he had reached the beginner level of the divine obliteration light, as long as he increased his soul power, his attack power would immediately skyrocket. However, you're courting death. Immortal Jin Heng was furious. He pointed his finger like a sword. Whoosh! The seven-star godly sword flickered with starlight, and an extremely mysterious light flashed. It chased after Bai Ziyue like a shadow. What a fast sword! What a powerful sword! Ziyue's heart trembled. He could clearly feel the power of the sword. He knew that if he was hit, the immortal martial-colored glaze light and heavenly cycle protection technique would not be able to block the attack. He would definitely die. Therefore, he hurriedly unleashed the consummate level of shrinking earth to its maximum. One step after another, he quickly stepped forward. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Ziyue's body was like a phantom, moving like a waterfall. He was faster than immortal Jin Heng's flying sword. On the other side, Great Demon White Tiger also had the upper hand. Although Miao Dingjin and Hu Dali were both first-rate early Divine Realm experts, Miao Dingjin relied on the power of divine ability. Although the power of divine ability was strong, it consumed a lot of energy. After a series of battles, Miao Dingjin had consumed a lot of energy. Apart from divine ability, his speed and defensive power were far inferior to Great Demon White Tiger. Therefore, after Hu Dali forcefully withstood the attacks of several divine abilities and approached Miao Dingjin, the situation immediately reversed. Tiger palms continuously slapped his body. Immediately, his defensive spirit light dimmed, and it looked like it would collapse at any moment. "Senior, save me!" Miao Dingjin quickly retreated and shouted in horror. Immortal Su San hesitated for a moment and threw out a painting. On the painting, a scholar was writing words. On the words, there were 7 kill words, arranged in order from the biggest to the smallest. Each of these kill characters was more terrifying than the last. Just by looking at these kill characters, it was as if one was in a sea of blood. Waves of tyrannical and ruthless aura rushed straight to one's head. Chapter 398. With a sizzling sound, the word "kill" was formed and was imprinted on the White Tiger Great Demon. Roar! The White Tiger Great Demon wailed as a deep bloody wound appeared on his body. Traces of blood spread out, forming a clear kill character. "Thank you for your help, Senior." Miao Dingjin heaved a sigh of relief and quickly retreated. However, right at this moment, a black ruler suddenly fell from above his head. It slashed through the air and quickly smashed down. "Oh no!" Miao Dingjin's expression changed drastically as he felt a sharp pain in his mind and his vision turned black. Then, a flying sword flashed like a meteor and hit his head directly. The sword Qi swallowed and spat out the power of law evasion and law destruction. Puff! Miao Dingjin's protective spiritual light was broken instantly. The flying sword did not reduce its power and pierced through his head in an instant. Suddenly, the sect leader of the Gu God sect, Spiritual Master Miao Dingjin, who was at the early stage of the God realm, died. Spiritual energy plus 594,233. After killing Miao Dingjin with a single slash, Bai Ziyue summoned the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. With a light tap, the heavily injured Hu Dali was stored away. "You're courting death." Spiritual Master Su San's face was gloomy. He quickly stretched out his hand and the remaining 6 kill words on the painting shot out rapidly. One after another, the kill words came from all directions and almost engulfed Ziyue. At the same time, Spiritual Master Jin Heng's 7-star divine sword pierced through the sound barrier like a golden silk thread. Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. He took a step forward and passed through the edge of the kill word. After that, he took another step forward. Ziyue used the shrinking ground to the extreme. With a step, he was more than 100 feet away. In just a few steps, he had already rushed out of the attack range of Spiritual Master Jin Heng and the others. Boom! The 6 kill characters collided with each other, creating a deafening sound. A large part of the ground caved in from the impact. Smoke and dust rose into the air like clouds. But in the end, he missed. Swoosh! 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 At the same time, the other Heavenly Spirit sect cultivators also quickly approached, their faces solemn. Taoist Master Su San's face was cold and gloomy. An extremely sullen feeling was born in his heart. Since he started cultivating until now, he had experienced countless battles, big and small. Although he couldn't say that he won all of them, he still felt extremely carefree. But today, being toyed with by the other party without being able to land a single blow, this was the first time he had felt so stifled. He was vexed and depressed, so he quickly turned into a green light and chased after them. "Stop chasing!" Immortal Jean Hing shouted in a low voice, his face extremely gloomy. At this moment, the anger and unwillingness in his heart surpassed that of Reverend Su San. He had never thought that he would suffer such a huge loss at the hands of an aperture enlightening cultivator. However, the other party's speed was simply too fast. Even Sage Tianhe, who was on the hovering warship, might not be able to match the speed of the other party, let alone him. So what if he chased after them? Could he catch up? Escaped? Everyone was stunned. Today's battle had really broadened their horizons. It also gave them a new understanding of Bai Ziyue's strength. In particular, his speed could be said to be unparalleled in the world. Even immortal Jean Hing, who was at the peak of the middle stage divine realm, couldn't catch up with him. Such speed, such strength. Is Ziyue really just an aperture enlightening cultivator? I don't know, but the divine realm experts' qi and divine sense are combined as one, and their qi is completely different from that of the aperture enlightening cultivators. There is no such sign on him at all. However, this kind of monster can't be judged by common sense. No matter what realm he is in, it's not something you and I can judge. So, he is actually just an aperture enlightening cultivator? Going against the odds to kill an immortal. This was really going against the odds to kill an immortal. In the entire ancient desolate realm, how many people had been able to go against the odds to kill an immortal? 2 or 3. But Ziyue was definitely the strongest one among them. So far, how many divine realm experts have died in his hands? Immortal Yuan, Immortal Hao Yu of the Celestial Spirit Sect, Sect Leader Miao Ding and Immortal Zhen Miao of the Gu God Sect, and Hua Wenxing. Although he didn't die, he suffered irreparable injuries. Everyone couldn't hide their excitement. As they discussed, they felt that Ziyue's strength was extremely powerful, and they were extremely shocked. I didn't expect his strength to have reached such a level. No wonder he didn't want to accept my proposal. Immortal Wanhong, the sect leader of the Chaoyang Dao sect, felt dizzy. He looked at the people of the Celestial Spirit sect and couldn't help showing a trace of pity. No matter how powerful the Celestial Spirit sect was, it would still be a huge loss if they missed out on such a peerless genius. Once Bai Ziyue bore a grudge against them, the loss and impact would be immeasurable. Most importantly, it wouldn't take too long. He had investigated Ziyue, so he was naturally very clear about the speed of his rise. It could be said that the speed of his rise was shocking. He estimated that in a few years, it would be enough to make the Celestial Spirit sect feel heartbroken. Fan Qingyu relaxed and couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, Yufeng calmed down. Spiritual energy. 4714652. 4,710,000 soul energy should be enough to increase the power of my annihilation divine light by a large margin. Seeing that immortal Jean Hung and the others didn't chase after him, Ziyue relaxed. While maintaining his speed, he immediately focused on the attribute panel. In this battle, Ziyue's result was amazing. He alone had fought against several reverends at the divine realm, including 2 middle divine realm experts. However, he was still able to kill 3 of them and escape unscathed. This was shocking, and it shocked and terrified countless people. However, he wasn't satisfied with himself. In the end, this battle was instigated by Hua Wenxing and Miao Dingzhen. Miao Dingzhen was already killed by him. However, although Hua Wenxing was seriously injured, he didn't really die. Of course, he wasn't satisfied. Therefore, in his opinion, the battle wasn't over yet. Consume 1 million spiritual energy to upgrade the divine light of annihilation to minor accomplishment. Upgrade. Taking a deep breath, Ziyue chose to upgrade without hesitation. In an instant, countless insights and understandings about the silent divine light of annihilation suddenly appeared in his mind. Then, as if he had gone through thousands of days and nights of painstaking cultivation, he took the opportunity to cultivate the divine light of annihilation to minor accomplishment. The minor accomplishment divine light of annihilation is not weak. It's at least equivalent to the first class of the early divine realm. Ziyue secretly compared and soon came to a conclusion. For example, Miao Dingjin, Wan Hong, and the others, they must have cultivated the Golden Gung single-sword Qi or divine light of annihilation to minor accomplishment to be able to display the first class of the early divine realm. As for the purity of his spiritual energy, he ignited 1,080 points of his acupuncture points and completed the heavenly cycle acupuncture point. His spiritual energy automatically transformed into heavenly cycle force. This heavenly cycle force was vigorous and powerful. In fact, in terms of strength, it wasn't any weaker than the divine sense of an early divine realm cultivator. Naturally, with the minor accomplishment divine light of annihilation, its strength could also reach the first class of the early divine realm. However, it's still not enough. With a thought, Ziyue tapped on the attribute panel again. Consume 2 million spiritual energy to upgrade the divine light of annihilation to great accomplishment. Upgrade. Choosing to upgrade again, Ziyue's mind was stirred up. Endless insights flowed in his mind. Waves of unique changes appeared in his body inexplicably. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, gradually, Ziyue had a kind of enlightenment in his mind. He had completely received the experience of cultivating the divine light of annihilation. Then, without hesitation, he turned around and rushed in the direction of the ancient Desolation City. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, Ziyue used the shrinking ground. With every step he took, he was more than 1,000 feet away. In just 2 or 3 steps, he was more than 10,000 meters away. After thinking for a while, he used the invisibility skill. The complete invisibility skill was very exquisite. Under the situation where his body was one with the heavens and earth, it was silent and there were no fluctuations. Although it couldn't hide from the divine sense of an expert, under normal circumstances, who would cover their surroundings with their divine sense all the time. Therefore, Ziyue's body turned illusory and instantly disappeared from the heavens and earth. Senior brother? This time, we're just going to let him go? Spiritual Master Su San's face darkened, and he asked unwillingly. I'm not willing to let Ziyue go just like this. Senior brothers, please avenge me and Senior brother Hao Yu. At this time, Hua Wenxing took the spiritual pill to heal his injuries. His flesh and blood were quickly regenerating. He looked much better than before. Avenge? How? You've seen his speed. Not to mention you and me, even Martial Uncle Tian, he can't catch up with him. Spiritual Master Jin Heng's anger surged, and he couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied with Hua Wenxing. If it wasn't for his sudden intervention, this wouldn't have happened. Thinking of Fan Qing Yu's reminder that Ziyue wanted to join the Celestial Spirit sect, he felt even more depressed. He originally had a chance to become a peerless genius of the same sect, but because of his carelessness, he missed the opportunity. Moreover, the one he favored was Hua Wenxing, a narrow-minded person who only cared about himself. This made him even more regretful. Now, he still has the face to talk about revenge? Unfortunately, Hua Wenxing didn't have such awareness. His eyes were fierce and full of hatred. He said in a muffled voice, "It's a pity that Senior Brother Zhao Ben entered the Astral Wind Canyon. Otherwise, with his binding ability, the Golden Light Binding, Ziyue won't be able to escape death no matter how fast he is." Oh right, I remember that martial Uncle Tian, he has an air-frozen pearl that can restrain Xiu's speed. Why don't we ask him to lend it to us? With the help of 2 senior brothers, we can easily capture and kill him. You really don't want to give up on killing me? Then die. At that instant a voice could be heard all of a sudden. Following it, a sword glow rapidly swept across the sky. Not good, you dare. Chapter 399. The flying sword flashed at an extremely fast speed, and it happened when everyone was relaxed and unprepared. Puff! In an instant it pierced through Hua Wenxing's head. He was dead. Everyone was shocked. Too savage, too arrogant, and too shocking. They did not expect that not only did Xiu not leave, but he also secretly used the art of invisibility to come within 100 feet of them and killed Hua Wenxing with one strike. If he were to attack me at this moment, what would happen? Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Who could withstand such an attack when they were unprepared except for a few people? After the endless chill, a wave of anger rose in an instant. This anger was a response to Xiu's arrogance, and was stimulated by the threat to their lives. At the same time, layers of defensive spiritual light rose and they all launched their attack. Die! Perfected Su San roared and threw out the jade bottle and the painting at the same time. The 7 kill characters were filled with killing intent, covering the sky and the sun as they quickly enveloped the area in front of them. Perfected Jin Heng's 7-star divine sword turned into specks of starlight and pierced through the sound barrier. All the deity realm experts were shocked, but they immediately activated their protective spiritual light. Some of them were extremely vigilant and quickly retreated in the direction of the ancient Desolation City. Humph! Xiu's expression did not change after killing Hua Wenxing. His divine sense and heavenly cycle surged at the same time, and under the coordination, they quickly arranged themselves. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A mass of spiritual light that was filled with destruction and death was quickly formed. It was like a mass of dark clouds that was filled with the aura of death, and a mysterious horror was brewing within it. He reached out his hand and pointed slightly. In an instant, the mass of spiritual light rushed out. Divine power, divine light of annihilation. Moreover, it was the divine light of annihilation that had been upgraded to the greater mastery level. The divine light turned into a stream of light and quickly rushed to the 7-star divine sword. The 7 kill words and the mystic pure tricolored light sprinkled out from the jade bottle. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Pretty much in the blink of an eye, the Xianqing tricolored light and the 7 kill words were all wiped out. When it landed on the 7-star god sword, it dissipated slightly and was torn open by the god sword. Sure enough, even though my divine annihilation light has reached the great completion, it is still inferior to immortal Jinheng's 7-star godly sword. Xiu had expected this. The gap between realms was not so easy to cross. Although the great success stage divine light of annihilation had reached the level of an all-out attack of a cultivator in the middle stage of the divine realm, Reverend Jin Heng's cultivation base had reached the peak of the middle stage of the divine realm, and his sword Dao divine ability had reached the small success stage. In fact, its power was not weaker than an all-out attack of a cultivator in the late stage of the divine realm. Naturally, they could easily tear apart the divine light of annihilation and pass through it. With this in mind, Xiu took a step forward and instantly disappeared from where he stood. Shua. When he reappeared once more, he was already standing beside Sage Hua's corpse. With a wave of his hand, the corpse vanished into thin air. Arrogant! Reverend Su San was incomparably furious. He was right next to him, only 7 feet away from him. How could he do that? How could he be so arrogant? How could he snatch away junior brother Hua's corpse? His heart trembled, and with a clang, a ball of 7-colored spiritual light quickly appeared around his body and wrapped around him. Divine ability, seven-colored spiritual light of overcoming disaster. Unlike other people who had mastered the divine ability of killing, he valued his own life more. Therefore, he had mastered a defensive divine ability, which was somewhat lacking in the aspect of attacking. After using the seven-colored spiritual light of overcoming disaster, he stretched out his hand and pointed the jade bottle at Ziyue. With a whoosh, streaks of tricolored profound clear light rushed out rapidly. Humph! Ziyue snorted coldly, and a mass of divine annihilation light shot out from his body almost instantly. Puff! The divine annihilation light collided with the tricolored profound clear light, and almost instantly destroyed it. Then, without losing its momentum, it fiercely hit the seven-colored spiritual light of overcoming disaster. Chi, the divine annihilation light, which was filled with the power of destruction, death, and desolation, collided with spiritual master Su San's defensive divine ability, and a violent trembling sound was heard. The seven-colored spiritual light of overcoming disaster was indeed a defensive divine ability. With the support of spiritual master Su San's divine thought, it only dimmed slightly and blocked Ziyue's attack. In response, Ziyue's expression did not change. He took a step forward and disappeared from where he was. Boom! 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 At the same time, a series of attacks had already landed on where he was originally standing. Slightly standing still, Ziyue stretched out his hand and waved, and another mass of divine annihilation light rushed out. Chi. It fiercely hit spiritual master Su San's defensive divine ability. Then, in a flash, he disappeared from where he was. When he stood still, another mass of divine annihilation light hit spiritual master Su San. The divine annihilation light, which had been upgraded to great mastery, was not only more powerful, but also several times faster than before. Of course, correspondingly, the consumption was also greater. However, this was not a big deal to him. Divine annihilation light. Divine annihilation light. Divine annihilation light. Ziyue continuously shot out divine annihilation light, all of which rushed toward spiritual master Su San, making loud banging sounds. Unable to dodge, spiritual master Su San desperately fought back, but he could not hit his opponent. Spiritual master Su San was completely flustered. With a pale face, he asked with grief and indignation, "Why are you only attacking me?" "Because you are ugly," Ziyue replied coldly. Spiritual master Su San was stunned. What kind of reason was that? Feeling depressed, he quickly rushed to spiritual master Jin Heng's side while maintaining his defensive divine ability. With him around, the pressure on her was reduced slightly. If this continued, he estimated that it would not be long before his divine thought was exhausted, and he would not be able to maintain the seven-colored spiritual light of overcoming disaster to protect his body. Even so, he still took out restorative spirit pills and swallowed them without caring about the effects of the pill toxins. Ziyue was a person who was clear about gratitude and grudges. After dealing with the culprits, Miao Dingjin and Hua Wenxing, his mentality had changed and he became more relaxed. The reason why he targeted spiritual master Su San was naturally not because of his beauty or ugliness. It was because when he fought with Hua Wenxing and the others, he was the first to speak and help Hua Wenxing. In the battle after, he was also the most active, directly rushing to the front and attacking him. As the saying goes, don't hit laziness or hard work, hit blind people. If he did not hit such a blind person, who would he hit? With a thought, he threw out another ray of annihilation divine light. Boom! Taoist Master Su San's rainbow calamity, avoiding spirit light, instantly began to waver and become extremely dim. "Senior martial brother, save me!" Su San roared and desperately tried to escape, but found that no matter which direction he rushed in, he could not escape Ziyue's attack. "Don't worry, I have already sent a message to Martial Uncle. He will be here soon." Spiritual Master Jin Heng quickly sent a voice transmission. With a thought, the seven-star divine sword quickly shot out and ruthlessly stirred, quickly destroying the divine annihilation light. Ziyue, fellow Taoist Bai, today's battle actually originated from a misunderstanding between you and Junior Marshal Brother Hua. Now that Junior Marshal Brother Hua is dead, let's forget about our grievances. How about it? I think fellow Taoist Bai does not really want to be the enemy of Celestial Spirit sect, right? Perhaps in this place, your speed is unparalleled, and we can't do anything to you for the time being. But you should know that our Celestial Spirit sect has a deep foundation, with hundreds of gold core and more than 10 primordial spirit. If we really want to make things difficult for you, even if you hide at the end of the world, it will be difficult for you to escape. It is better to turn hostility into friendship and reconcile. Since fellow Taoist Bai also participated in the bone examination registration, I think you also want to join our Celestial Spirit sect. Why don't I guarantee that fellow Taoist Bai will be one of the 12 candidates and directly make you the first? Immortal Jin Hing quickly opened his mouth and advised. How about it? Ziyue's body flashed and appeared in another direction, shooting out another divine annihilation light. If it was before this incident, he would naturally be willing to accept the goodwill of the Celestial Spirit sect's Divine Realm experts. But now, he had killed 2 Divine Realm experts of Celestial Spirit sect in a row. Even if the other party was willing to let bygones be bygones, he did not dare to accept their goodwill. Who knew if all this was a trap or a conspiracy? He did not even have time to take precautions, so how could he walk into a trap? As for the 12 candidates and the first position, it was naturally meaningless to him at this time. On the contrary, the other party mentioned more than 10 primordial spirits and more than 100 gold cores, which made him a little afraid. But soon, he felt relieved. He would just have to deal with whatever came his way. Moreover, it was still unknown whether the primordial spirits and gold core supremes were really willing to go to war for a few Divine Realm experts. The floating battleship is coming. Just at this moment, a delicate voice was heard. Ziyue's expression changed. Sure enough, he saw a huge and magnificent battleship coming from afar at an extremely fast speed. Ziyue secretly looked at Fan Qingyu with a trace of gratitude. He threw out the last divine annihilation light and then rushed away without looking at it. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, he rushed away quickly. He knew that the one driving the battleship must be Immortal Tianhe, a late Divine Realm expert of Celestial Spirit sect. He already felt that it was difficult to deal with a middle Divine Realm expert. If he could not defeat him in a short time, he would definitely be no match for a late Divine Realm expert. Not to mention, he happened to hear that Immortal Tianhe had an air-frozen bead that could restrain his extreme speed. Once his speed was restricted, what awaited him would not be good. Don't run! A thunderous voice was heard. It seemed to contain a sound wave attack, which made countless people feel a stinging pain in their ears. Ziyue ignored it and used the distance shrinking technique to the extreme. His body turned illusory as he used the invisibility technique and quickly disappeared on the spot. At this moment, Ziyue's last divine annihilation light directly shattered Immortal Su San's protective divine ability. The 7-colored calamity avoiding spiritual light fell on his defensive robe. The powerful annihilation force spread and quickly destroyed the robe. A large part of his flesh and blood died, and he was severely injured. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.